You're listening to Ernestly Speaking, the only weekly podcast that covers friends, foes, and anything that goes. And now, for your badass host, Ernest Owens. And we're back for another episode of Ernestly Speaking with your host, Ernest Owens, myself. Well, it is March Madness indeed. March Madness with this weather. I don't even know where to start. You know, the weather is like going up and down. It was really good. You know, chilling earlier this week, you know, spring break vibes. You know, my students, were on their spring break, and that meant I was on my spring break technically. So I kind of enjoyed, getting some time away a little bit. I was still writing and working and doing my thing. But as far as teaching, I was able to have a nice little relaxation. But next week we're back at it. Okay. Professor Owens is back. So that was been cool, but it's like this weird weather. Like it just came like a little snow situation kind of came through, and now, it's chilling out right now. So, that's going on, but I'm just excited to be on this podcast today. I have so much to say. So much has went down this week. This has been a week, and it was just nonstop, but I'm happy, that, I'm doing what I'm doing, being able to be a journalist and be, I guess, a press conference for some people. And just shout out to my listeners who we're going to talk about some of the things that were down this week, and grateful for you all, like for listening, engaging, and just staying woke to what's going on out there. It has been a very, very learning week. But nonetheless, so my brother celebrated his birthday this week. He turned 19. And I have to give this review, right? So I never know what 19-year-olds want at this time in their life. Like my little brother, like I'm like, what do 19-year-olds want? They want like stuff that I didn't want when I was 19. I mean, they just go for the most expensive toys and gadgets. And, I have another brother who's 11. He's turning 12 next month, April 20th. And I'm like, what do y'all want? They want cell phones. They want subscriptions, monthly subscriptions to things. I mean, I remember like when I was around 12, what did I want? Like a DVD, CD. Those things don't really exist anymore. They want like, I need a PlayStation. I mean, I guess I wanted a PlayStation too, but that was like a Christmas gift, That wasn't like, or like that was like a real big surprise gift. It wasn't like just a random birthday gift, but they want a lot. So initially my brother wanted, the one who's turning 19, he wanted the Cura ring, which is this ring that like checks your REM, your heart pressure and all this stuff. And he's like athletic and stuff, like he's done track and he's, do a lot of that. And I was like thinking to myself, like, dude, this is a $300 ring. Just it's gonna monitor your heart rate and everything. Are you sure this is what you want? Like, can I give you money? Like, so at first this is what he wanted for Christmas. But then, I realized, oh, he might change his mind. So the funny thing is we went out for his birthday, and I'll get to where we went. We went to Sugar Factory, and before you all start, because I have some things to say about Sugar Factory. He went out there, he had a good time. It was interesting. But I realized I'm just gonna give him some cash. And I cashed at him some Benjamin Franklins, and he was happy with that. And I was the best brother in the world. Because I think what I've learned with 19-year-olds is, especially when they're in college, give them money. I just realized money is the answer in this particular situation. Like, I try to be creative and think of sentimental gifts, but then I realized at the end of the day, this child wants some money. Just, I'm trying to, put all the bells and whistles. So I actually was trying to get the Cora ring or whatever. But when I looked it up, you first have to get the ring. They have to try the ring on. They have to size it. Then you have to send it back. It's like I said, that's too much work. I'm just going to give him this money, whatever he chooses to do with it. If he wants to get the ring or do something else with it, it is his choice. But, I did take him out. And I was like, what does a 19-year-old, what's a fun place for a 19-year-old to go since they can't drink? And so the answer was Sugar Factory. And let me tell you all something. So you all know that I think on social media I've said, like, I think the food at Sugar Factory is disgusting. It doesn't look good. And I went to Vegas and they had a Sugar Factory there. But I never really engaged like with the drinks, you know. So I had seen the food, and what turned me off was like those sliders that were like rainbow with the dye. I don't personally think it's appealing to like do too much super dye on food. I mean, I know red velvet cake is chocolate cake with a red dye on her hue. Okay, that's fine. But like just taking hamburger buns and dyeing them green, yellow, red, blue, it's just not, it's not appealing at all. I don't know. Especially if there's no taste and they're like, oh, there's nothing that they do to change the taste. It's like just an aesthetic. I'm like, I'm good on that. That just sounds weird. So, and also too, I was just not excited about the food. I was like, this is just a lot of, it's just glorified junk food. And I don't know if the food, I don't know if I want a milkshake or any of this sugary candy and drinks and then have this alongside like an actual meal. And I don't really know if the culinary excellence justifies the price and everything of the food. Everything about it just was like the food, I was just like turned off before. So before going in, I was like saying to him, I was like, listen, do you want to eat here? And he was just like, no, no, no. He was just like, he was just like, no. I was like, oh, I've had an influence on his palate slightly. He was just like, no, I don't want to, I want to just eat candy. He just wanted candy. He wanted to drink. So they have these big ass, like goblet ass cocktails there that have like the power rocks and the smoke and the all of that. I call them Little Mermaid drinks, like the Ursula Sea, which those drinks that got the things come to bubbles. It's fun, right? And I remember Ocean Prime. I know they had those drinks, but I haven't seen it with the power rocks or whatever. Because Mr. Bartender Barry, he was educating me on this before I went there. He was looking like, listen, this is gonna be a bunch of overhyped crap. But aesthetically, as an experience, it's pretty, right? It's great to take photos and everything. So let me just tell you about the Chicken Factory. It's in Philly. It is in the Old Porta, which was an Italian restaurant that shortly lived. It's like in the neighborhood. It's around 12th and Chestnut. They're very, very brand new. So new that they don't have a sign made on the actual restaurant. So do as you may with that, right? Go inside. There's a bunch of celebrity photos. Like they really want you to know that this is not a local establishment. Like this is a chain. They want you to know that this is like world renowned or nationally renowned in the sense of like a lot of people go here. And it was interesting because it was like a lot of celebrity photos. Clearly none of the celebrity photos were in these, they were not in Philly, but they were all around the different locations. And I was in my mind wondering like, is Philly going to go for this? Because we have a love-hate relationship with, with restaurants. Like we have a love-hate relationship with like national chains. Like we don't keep too many things open. We don't have a TGI Fridays in Philly anymore. That went away. I think the Applebee's is like no longer here. Ruby Tuesdays is gone. We don't have we barely have McDonald's. Like McDonald's is around, but it's very like not uberly embraced like that. Like I think we don't have too many McDonald's. They're finally putting a Raising Cane's, but they took out a Bobby Burger Palace. Burger King's, I don't even know if there's a Burger King, maybe like one Burger King in Philly around the Philadelphia area. I mean, there's like maybe one Walmart. Like it's like we're not crazy about chains in Philly like that. I mean, there's a couple that slide by. Like there's one Cheesecake Factory that everyone goes to. I don't, but people go to. But it's an interesting situation. Like people really are not crazy about the fast food chain. This is a place that really loves its street, its food trucks. It's they call them poppy stores. The people really love their neighborhood spots to get the fast food. They're not really crazy about chains like that. They love them. They love Checkers. Philadelphians love Checkers, right? So there's a lot of Checkers here. Interesting enough. But and growing up in the South, Checkers there was a place called Rally's, and I think Rally's and Checkers are like owned by the same people. So I was like, this is like a Rally's, and we call it Rally's in the South, but the East Coast call it Checkers. Interesting enough. So going in, there was this emphasis on like all the celebrities. And it kind of reminded me of like Hard Rock Cafe without all the colors and lights. But that whole, celebrities go here. It's hot. It's a legendary spot. All these celebrity faces. There's Kanye. There's the Kardashians. There's all these different faces. So that was interesting up front. But I do think they're trying to figure out their management. It's like too much going on. It's all these people walkie-talkies and headpieces walking around looking important. And I'm just like, okay, where is the, making a reservation made no sense. I made a reservation for 5:30. We were still waiting at 6. It was just a lot going on. They were trying to train people. So I had a lot of, grace and space. One thing to know up front, they do give you a 20% automatic charge to your bill. So before I get into what ended up happening with ordering things, they do. And I think that's because of the byproduct of the pandemic. Like every place is like saying off the top, they're going to put in the gratuity in advance so that you don't have to deal with tip. I think I'm for it. I think for the most part, I think the hard part is that what happens when we have bad service. But I would imagine that you do speak, or what if you want to give more? Or maybe you just should give more. Like in my situation, my bill was charged a certain way, but I could add on or give cash. But I do think to some way, like if this is going to guarantee that, essential workers and people are getting paid properly and fairly, I'm for it. But there's been some cases where surcharges are being made on bills, and that's company profit. What I heard from Sugar Factory is that 17% of out of your 20%, 17% goes to the workers, and then 3% is like an administrative charge or whatever. So they're getting basically the workers are getting a 17% tip. I am traditionally 20% or higher. That's how I've always done it. I've always believed the tips at the base is 20%. I've been like that for it's been a minute, but like I have always had the mindset of a tip is 20% or higher. For me, that's my mindset. If I go to a fine dining restaurant where I'm getting, whatever, people are coming out, bringing out the drinks and the server's working, like 20% is the base. And after that, if it's just more or I'm feeling real good, it can be over 20% for sure. So that's how I've always kind of, done my tipping. It's like 20% is the base. People are like 15%. I'm like 10% is a tax, child. That's not I don't know. I just feel like 20% or higher is what I shoot for if I go to a fine dining restaurant. And I try to avoid going to, just regular, small, diner spots if I can make the food myself. Because when I go out to eat, it's like I want to experience. So I feel like that makes sense for me. Now, some people, it's different. Like, wherever you want to go and eat, it's your prerogative. But I think if you're going to a fine dining restaurant, if you're going to a restaurant where you're going to be eating courses, you're doing your thing, 20% to me is the base. That's like the bare minimum. And then you work your way up. As somebody who's worked in the restaurant space in some capacity in my youth, those people who did that, they were greatly appreciated. And I think even restaurants I see, they're doing 20% surcharges off top. So it seems like everyone agrees, at least in these conversations, even in the restaurant industry, like 20% is the minimum in the conversation around tips or gratuity. Like, I think that's solid. So that I knew coming in. So when we got there, we was getting our drinks. I was looking at the cocktails. There was so many. I think I counted like 36 or like 35 different cocktails. Most of them were the goblets. They were shoving the goblets down in your face. Like there were some other ones that were like $18, but they really want you to get the big ass drink that says Sugar Factory, and they want you to choose all these different weird flavors. It was like 1,000 different flavors, and I thought some of them may have been redundant. It was like a raspberry lemonade, a strawberry lemonade, a mojito island tropical, a tropical breeze, a tropical mist, a tropical forest. I mean, it was like all these weird like flavor titles, and I was just like, oh my goodness, this was reminding me of Cheesecake Factory, where back in the day when I used to go there, this is why I don't go now. I remember when I was younger and I was like, your first date spot or whatever. He's like looking like, wow, there's so many options and I'm overwhelmed. And I'm studying this and this type of, marketing is that's a goal to try to put you in a place where you just, tap something. Or is it that it's for picky eaters or people who just really are picky? Like, is this a spot for picky daters? Like people that are very picky about food. There's like 1,000 options so you can find something you like. I just always think about like quality when you deal with that much quantity. Like how do you assess value based on that? Personally, that's, but for me, less is more. Like my favorite type of restaurant is a restaurant that's like here's a tasting menu. It's $60, $70, whatever. We're going to give you all these things. Whatever you don't like, let us know if you have any allergic reactions. We'll address it, but come for the experience. Like tonight, my husband and I were going out to Soraya, which is a really great Mediterranean restaurant, Lebanese restaurant actually, and it's incredible food. And they have a tasting menu. They go in and they say, "Listen, everyone has to commit to a $70 tasting menu here," and you just go and you just have the experience. It's a cultural experience. The food is great. Love it. I think those kind of that kind of marketing and things make sense, especially in the restaurant industry. But nonetheless, I digress. So I'm looking at these drinks. They start off at $34 a pop. Yes, all of the drinks were $34 in the goblets, which clearly you go for the goblets because you want the sexiness of the goblets and things. And I think that's what's going to be fun. It's like there's a sexiness to the goblet drinks, the cocktails. And I was like, $34 is a lot. And not only that was for non-alcohol. You know what I'm saying? I think that's what's going to be was really going to be reported. And I think that's what's going to happen. Because, yeah. So I look at these drinks. I'm like, okay, I pick one. My brother picks one. He gets the non-alcoholic one, so that's like $34. I'm getting the mojito, which, you can add alcohol, not alcohol. So it's for people who, it's very, I would say it's fun for kid-friendly vibes because I saw the kids drinking. Some of the other kids had their own little goblets and they had their little experience. But like, again, those are $34, y'all. Don't sleep on them. So I have mine with alcohol. So let's just say this. The bill came. That's all we got. Like, we just got these two drinks. The bill came. Y'all, the bill was $100. It was like $99 It was $100. And I'm sitting here like, first of all, I wasn't, in my mindset, I was like, we're going to go here. This is how much we're going to probably spend if he wants to get food, candy, desserts, whatever. He just wanted to have a drink. He just wanted to have like the bubbly drink because everyone on Instagram was sharing it. And then we did get some candy at the end, which was like $10 for a bag. So that was easy for him. But I was sitting there looking like, this is not a cheap date. Like this will break. I say, wait a minute. I mean, I was like, I got it. Like it ain't nothing like I don't have it. But listen, just because you got it don't mean that you can't inspect. I was like $100 for me and him to have one of these drinks together. Like we had a drink, he had a drink, that was $100. Now let's say this young man wanted to be, he wanted to eat something. He was hungry. He wanted to eat a meal or something. We would have easily would have spent $200 at Sugar Factory. And this is not cuisine, y'all. This is not, like, I'm sitting here looking like, I was trying to do the math. I was like, what? Now, granted, the gratuity and everything was included in all of that. But y'all, what? And so I showed him the bill. He was like laughing. And he was like, oh, they don't have a happy hour here. I said, they clearly don't. I said, this is definitely not a happy hour. I said, happy hour with me and my besties, right? When the Lit brothers get together, when it's Josh, it's me, it's Jamarcus, it's George, and we get together and do a happy hour, that's how much we spend. Maybe, I mean, not even a piece. Maybe we spend about maybe 70 something because we go hard, we go hard, but we are eating. We're having tater tots with caviar. We're having, we're drinking. We're having real drinks. We're having multiple drinks. I was like, I said, listen, you had the experience of a lifetime. You go and tell your friends that your big brother got you a $50 mocktail. Because, child, I was sitting there like, this is love. And the funny part is that, Mr. Johnson wanted to come initially, but then it was traffic because, Biden was in Philadelphia, on Friday. And so Mr. Johnson wanted to come, right? And I was like, okay, maybe. And then, last minute traffic came. I said, listen, I told him when I got home, I said, let me tell you something. If you would have came with us and had a drink, we would have been dropping around $150 for the three of us to have one drink. And he said to me, I told you. I said, and the crazy part was, I don't even think the drink was strong. I don't even know if they put alcohol. I couldn't even taste alcohol in the drink. I think we both had mocktails. I was sitting there like, I don't even know what happened. But honestly, for me, it was just like, this is an experience. It's a memory. He had a good time. I'm happy. We were happy. It was all good, right? That's my mindset. I think what I will say to people is, if you are a single person on a date night, unless if you want to spend, see, the issue to me is like, I'm not saying be cheap. By all means, don't. All I'm saying is that there are better ways to spend that money and maximize that money with better drinks, better service, better venue, better food, and you will get more bang for your buck somewhere else in Philadelphia than Sugar Factory. I think Sugar Factory, I don't know what it's going to do in Philly, because I don't know how, I mean, I see a lot of people going right now. I think everybody's trying to try it. I think everybody's trying to, like me, trying to figure it out. But I feel like, I don't know, because Philadelphia will shut a major chain down. Okay, they will shut a major chain. They don't care. This is a ruthless city when it comes to chain restaurants. They don't care. And I just wonder, like, how long they're going to be able to pull this off. Because right now, it's a baby, right? It's in its infancy stage. Everybody's hearing about it. But I think if enough word of mouth come around, I just feel like it's going to be really one of those, I mean, maybe it's just a celebratory event. Like, you just go for birthdays. Because I saw a lot of birthdays. And, like, it was my little brother's birthday. So we only went for there. But, like, you can't sustain a restaurant based on birthdays. Maybe you can't. I don't know. I just feel like let me just say this, like, any of my friends, all of my faves, all of my friends, any of my friends, listen, we can have a party. Please, before you make that decision, you drop that reservation to go to Sugar Factory. Please understand that we can go somewhere else and we can do way more. I would rather go to a BYOB, an Italian BYOB, and bring bottles before I go out here, okay, and drop like $50 for one drink. And then we got to buy you drinks because you're the birthday person. Like, I wasn't here for it, y'all. I was definitely like, this is a one and done. I don't know if I'll be back. And if I'll be back, somebody's got to be throwing up. It got to be something going on. But I've had better. But the kid liked it. And that's all that mattered. Him having a smile on his face. And you all saw our Instagram and things. He had a good time, and I'm really happy that he enjoyed it. It was his birthday. At the end of the day, it was his birthday, not mine. But even he kind of was like, because I think he was thinking about, like, he has a girlfriend, as you all know, and some of you all have seen him and have tried to introduce him to other young ladies that are in your circle. And listen, these young ladies are beautiful. These are beautiful girls, beautiful Black young ladies. He has a girlfriend currently. He's been with her for, I think, over a year. So, he's taken. But I would definitely let him know that there are many lovely young maidens that are interested or would like to get to know him better. So, if he's single. But as of right now, he's not single. So as the big brother that I am, I won't even let him know who, what, where, or anything, because that's what big brother's supposed to do. They're supposed to respect the dating decisions of their brothers. And I do like the girl he's dating. She's very sweet, very nice girl. And she stands for me. I think that's a major factor. If any of these young ladies, they have to stand for the big brother. Like, she stands. She gets it. She understands the assignment. I like her a lot. Her name's Ariana. So such a sweet girl. So I feel so old now. I'm like, oh my goodness. I'm like, yeah, but he's with her. He's happy, and she's a sweet girl. He saw her for spring break. They both, of course, we're from Texas, from Houston, so it's a long distance relationship. And I talked about that. I said, how do you feel about long distance? Because I've never done long distance dating before. I think my freshman year there was somebody I knew in high school that I was still like keeping up with, and so I would come home for Thanksgiving and be like, how you doing? But it wasn't like a relationship, because clearly I just But listen. Love is different. I mean, he's committed. She comes to Philly. He goes to Texas. I mean, they keep this thing going. I'm impressed. These are different times. So, yeah. You also had fun. I was happy he had fun. I think he was thinking like this could be a potential date night situation. But I was like, listen, that's gonna break your bank. Okay, I'm gonna have to bail you out. That's one of those, you're going to go somewhere, spend some money, you're going to end up texting your brother, like, can you cash at me because I spent more than I thought. It's going to be like, I'm not trying to save you a Sugar Factory, dog. So I don't know. I'm happy we went together, because he said that there were friends of his that were interested in going and making a thing of it, but they, So I know they're going to be out this weekend because he's got another friend who has a birthday around his age, and they're like going to an Italian restaurant or something. And I was going to take him to Soraya with Mr. Johnson and I, and he was very much like, um, he was like, "Oh, I already have plans." I'm like, "You have plans? So you're going to turn down this Soraya invitation to go out to an Italian?" You know what? No, I'm joking. I, most of you all on the podcast, we're all grown. You know what's listen. You like what? But he doesn't know. He has he's going to be with his friends. We had a good time. So moving along. I've been going to a lot of plays and musicals. You all have been seeing that. I went to a couple of great shows so far. I saw Beautiful the Carol King musical with my fave. I love her, Laura Schwartz. She's such a bestie. We've been going out to a lot of stuff together, like musicals and things, and we're going to have a lot more in common very soon. But we saw Carol, we saw Beautiful, which I loved. I knew of Carol Cole, but I really got into Carol Cole after that musical. Like, I now listen to that album, Tapestry. I've been addicted to it. I haven't been telling people, but like, I love this album. I love it. It won Album of the Year at the Grammys. It's a trailblazing artist. She's an incredible singer-songwriter. She's been around forever. This album is like going to be 50 years old this year, but the music is so relevant now. A legend. And that musical was phenomenal and great. I saw Choir Boy, which is by Terrell Alvin McCraney, which you all know I've interviewed, have met with Oprah and, David Makes Man, all of that. Well, I saw Choir Boy in Philly, and for those who have not seen this, it is incredible. Like, go see Choir Boy. If there's tickets available around, go see Choir Boy. Like, I need you all to see it. It is a play. Like, I love theater. I'm a thespian at heart. Like, I love theater. Like, this is good from beginning to end. I was in love with it. It is an incredible work of theater. And then I saw Oklahoma. Okay, Roger Hammerstein's Oklahoma, the revival that's at the Rogers Theaters this week, and I saw it with Laura, and we sat there and we was like, "What are we watching?" So Oklahoma, Oklahoma with that musical, right? Legendary, been around for like decades. They have done a revival, and it's in Philly, and it's got an interesting cast. There's a black trans woman who, her name is Sis in the program, but she plays Annie Annie is her character. Incredible voice, incredible spirit. She was, to me, the standing, like the highlight of the entire musical for me. And Annie is a very popular character in the Broadway canon. The previous actress who won that award, who played that character in Revival, won the Tony for Best Featured Actress. So the role is a great role. Any actress who would get a role like that reminds me of, like, different Broadway musicals. Anybody who gets the role of Mama June in Gypsy, Alphaba in Wicked. There is Rose Seeley in the Color Purple musical. There are certain, like, landmark roles that are definitive, like Evita, there's just certain roles. And I feel like that's one of these signature roles, that any actress that can get it will have a good time with it. If they perform it well, it's bound to get Tony consideration and things like that. Well, in this revival, she kills it. And I thought she brought something to it. This show is very, very avant-garde, is the best way to describe it. There is a lot of grotesque scenes. There's blood. There is a lot of guns. Over 100 of them. Gunfire throughout the show. There are scenes that go completely pitch black. Like, they shut the entire lights off in the theater. I don't want to get into the details, but, like, all I will say is it made me have to go back and watch the original Oklahoma version, like the original playing by the numbers, to understand what the hell I watched, because the way that they did it, it was just so inventive. And I don't think it was inventively bad. It was just kind of like, whoa, I was not walking into this. I wasn't prepared. I thought that this was going to be a little bit a safer musical that was about, two people mad that this girl won't go on a dance with them. This became something far more extreme and dramatic, and it was interesting. It's one of those shows that I saw once. I don't know if I'll see it again. I don't know. I just have a lot of questions, but I do find it compelling. I do think it's something interesting. And if you
are interested in a musical, first go see Beautiful by the Carol Cole, if that's still out. Go see that first. Because if I was to pick the two, go see Beautiful first if you haven't seen it. If you've seen Beautiful and you just want to see something different and you have that capacity to hear gunfire shots or whatever, go see Oklahoma. The singing was interesting. There were some great musical moments. It was just a very interesting revival. So that's that on that. Now, COVID who? I had a moment where I was like, yo, COVID who? And it felt like COVID was interesting. But then I found out that the vaccinated numbers in Philadelphia, according to the health department, is not as high as people imagine. The numbers are finding out that there, even with children who we thought were vaccinated, is 20% lower. Like, the numbers are not there. So there's a lot of people that's actually not as vaxxed as we thought they were. And so that kind of gave me like a, ooh. But I must say, I have been slowly adjusting. I must say, I have not been wearing my K95 mask all the damn time. I am wearing a mask, but I've been in different spaces alternating. Because sometimes, I'm not going to hold you. I know the mask is working because my ability to sometimes breathe has been, like, disrupted. Like, it's not that I can't breathe. It's just that there's a discomfort with the level of how strong that mask is, that when I'm, like, going to certain events, I'm like, ooh, I just would like to just breathe out a little more. Because, like, when you're in certain spaces, when you're breathing, that heat, that steam, it's like, it stays there for a long period of time. So one of the things I've been doing is, like, when I go to theaters and things like that, I will wear the regular, surgical mask if I'm not facing too many people around me when I'm in the theater. Now, when I'm in my Uber and everywhere else, I wear the, K95 or whatever. But when I go into the theater and I'm in certain spaces that are not as crowded, I switched masks because I'm like, I can't keep this on. Oh my goodness. Like, it's just too much. So I will switch masks based on the environment I'm in. And that's been my new strategy navigating the pandemic. Like, I'm still wearing masks because Uber still requires mask wearing. Like, let's not play. Like, if you're in any ride sharing or you're riding public transportation, like, I just feel like any of these mass transits, you should be wearing a mask. That's my personal opinion. So that's there. The vaccination, it's interesting. Like, no one's asking for vaccination cards anymore. No proof of vaccination. And I'm still keeping my card because you never know. Listen, with variants and things going on, you just never know, y'all. Like, I'm hearing that, they're doing a lot of contamination of water. They're looking into water to trace COVID. And they're saying they're seeing an increase because, with water, public water, there's sewage, biofecal matter, stuff like that goes into the water. You flush the toilet, whatever. And so the scientists, they're getting that water because it contains your feces, stuff like that. And they're looking to see the impact of COVID and whatever. And they're noticing that there's an increase in COVID, like the COVID variants or whatever. That's in some areas, in some cities, they're seeing that. So it's looking like, is there an increase in people getting COVID now? Is it slowly increasing or rising? It's that question. Don't know if there's any new variants being found per se, but there seems to be something happening here. But we just got to remain vigilant. We just have to be very, just keep our eyes open because unless we get to a part where we're in the summer and like there's nothing, like there's just consistent numbers, cases are going down, but they're just consistent cases going down, then, maybe my perspective might change on this. We'll see. So, let's talk because this is about political races locally. And there is a lot been happening. A lot of you have seen some of the stuff that was going on Twitter. I did the Twitter Spaces on Friday night. And this culture, this is something that has been mind-boggling for me, to be honest. Because normally when let me just start off like this because there's so much. And I have wanted to be able to share this and reflect on it and think on it and really say this because, there might be people listening to this podcast that don't listen to this podcast often. We do have a national audience. There are people that listen to this across the country, but there are also interested people that I think don't understand how any of this works. They don't. And I think it's wild because these people are Democrats. I'm not even talking about Republicans. Over the past several weeks, I have noticed that, and I haven't really paid much attention to it. I just, I'm aware of political codes. Let me be clear, you all know that. I know that there is a K-hive, right? That there is a strong support of Kamala Harris, which is the vice president of the United States. Absolutely, right? But here's the thing. I'm realizing that there is a real moderate cult on social media that are downright nasty. I mean, completely, utterly nasty. And I mean nasty in the sense that these are grown ass people. And what about grown ass people? It's like you're in your 50s, your mid 40s, and you're acting like you're in your early 20s, and you're like acting like the trolls that are like young, like Nicki Minaj stands. Like, it's wild to me. And I knew they exist in the far right? We know that there are Republicans, GOPs, conservatives, neo-Nazis. We know that there is that core group of these grown-ass adults, predominantly white, that are like harassing any type of person who has any stances or beliefs or ideas that conflict to theirs. Those far rights, they troll. We know those people exist. But I am here to tell you all on this podcast that there is a extreme moderate cult of people who berate, disrespect, demean, and aggressively harass and troll and target progressives, people they think are progressives, people who disagree with their political candidates of interest. It's real. And y'all, I was like, what the fuck? And I have to say this as somebody who's covered politics, that, with me, you all know I'm an equal opportunity critic. Like, I am, and anybody who knows, and again, Philadelphia knows, Pennsylvania knows, and a lot of people in different spaces know across the country. Y'all know that for me, everybody gets this work. I'm very critical of Vice President Kamala Harris on certain positions and alliances that she stands for. Like, I think that her support of policing is concerning. Like, the fact that now she's currently supporting Biden on the fund the police rhetoric, that stance. Some of the concerns that was raised about policies that she made when she was in the AG role that kind of was talking about imprisoning trans people, the conversations around truancy, some of those issues, and just some of her alignment strongly with law enforcement, that, raised concerns to people. That's a fair question, a fair critique. Like, it's something that has been following Kamala since she's become the vice president of the United States. I mean, that's just a real thing. Whether or not people like it, people think it matters or don't matter, clearly voters didn't care when they went to the polls and voted for her. I voted for her in a general election. I'm not a dumbass, but I don't necessarily have to be, yes, Kamala, yes, Biden, because that's not how I feel. And I think people get mad when the term lesser evils is brought up. Listen, different people are going to perceive that differently, right? Some people don't want to hear the word evils because they believe that one is a heaven and one is a hell. I think politics, because I have covered politics locally, nationally, I know so much about these individuals. I just don't necessarily think either party is not above reproach. Republicans and conservatives, by all means, is the worst of the political group. But there are things that happen in the Democratic Party that also perpetuates and continues concerns and issues around different communities, right? Like, people who supported Don't Ask, Don't Tell. That was not okay. Don't Ask, Don't Tell was not cool, y'all. That was Democrats who was for that. That wasn't okay. Rhetoric around funding the police, to act as though police funding is being somehow stopped. That's not true. And that rhetoric happening, the fact that there are Democrats that's taking the talking points of conservatives to try to win them over is just not a good strategy. It's just not. It's not appealing to certain demographics with the Democratic Party. It's just not happening, right? So, as somebody who's my entire life has voted for Democrats, I've never voted for Republican, okay? I've never not voted for a Democrat. Even though I've never voted for Green Party. I've voted for Democrats, but I am somebody who is critical of the fact. Like, I'm currently a registered Democrat. But there have been times where I've been like, you all make it hard in different parts of of elections to just be out here giving my vote. But I've always voted Democrat. I've always voted in the general election for a Democrat. Like, that's just what it is. However, what I'm not going to do is sit up and act like Democrats are saints. That's just not what I do. I don't think anyone should do that. I don't think that any of these elected officials in a country that we're in right now should be put on a pedestal and praised and not critiqued. People cannot do it. And I think there's an issue where if we cannot share disagreements about elected officials and we conflate disagreements about politicians the same way that we think about them as regular people, we have failed. Critical thinking has went out the window. And I think that that's really disturbing, that there are some real far extreme moderate people, like far extreme progressives. And let me be clear, I am not here for far extreme progressives that also talk down to black voters, also talk down to different types of black individuals that are on the margins, right? Because the thing about someone like myself, I'm a black queer millennial. I have lived in a generation where I've seen the impact of mass incarceration. I have seen LGBTQ rights, evolve and also not evolve. I've seen racism within the Democratic Party that has kind of made it complicated sometimes for voices like mine and others to be represented in the dialogue. I've seen all of this happen in my lifetime. And so when you're at this point of the game and you're seeing this, the mindset becomes, let's really get serious about how to make the future look better. And if we are going to be within the same quote unquote party and wrestle with this, I don't think completely and utterly attacking young black voters or lying and saying that they don't vote or just completely treating any critique they have against current elected officials as ageism, I think you missed the mark. I think this is why we see low voter turnout in certain areas. Because if this is what's going to be met, then what are we doing? So let me put this all in context because I just want to lay that down. I, had posted a Twitter thread last week about Malcolm Kenyatta's run. And I said that, and I've said this before, you all who listen to the podcast, that I think that there's some concerns about this race with him because it's like, why is he still staying in the race with all of the issues going on with his campaign? He doesn't have the money. It's really weird about what position he stands on this party, all of that. Well, there was a group, I guess, of this moderate following on social media. Some of them label themselves as the K-Hive. Yes, they're describing their support for an elected official in the same way that one would describe support for a entertainer like Beyonce. Like, this is the kind of dogmatic political obsession. We're inflating celebrity culture obsession with politicians. That is very concerning to me. Even politicians I really, really like, right? Like, I like Leticia James in New York. I like others in local, and like in Philadelphia, there's politicians I like in Philadelphia, right? But I would never have this stan celebrity trolling mindset about them. Like, I don't go online looking for people who criticize Leticia James and troll them or attempt to dox them or just sick a bunch of nasty followers to just harass them. Like, that's just not what I'm going to do with my day. Like, I never have ever Google searched politicians that not Google search, Twitter search or whatever, politicians that I like and see what other people say negative. Normally I just amplify good articles of, interesting information about the person and keep it moving. Like, I don't actually spend my time trying to find the naysayers. I typically amplify those people who are saying something, profound or whatever. That's how I move in my space. I just think like actively looking for dissent, like finding like 3-year-old tweets that people are using that criticizes my fave, and then trying to bring it up into a conversation. Like, what the time you're spending trying to berate people who have different opinions about the people you support rather than amplifying the people that you do support. It's just, that's what it is, right? It reminds me of 2016 when Hillary was running for president, of course, and she was going against Trump. And I remember there was so much energy about Trump. And I remember following that race, and I was just saying, listen, there's got to be a better way to go about this election. Because if you're spending more time talking about Trump and not spending enough time amplifying Hillary, then Hillary is on the defense, and then that puts her in a position where she can lose. And she lost. And she shouldn't have lost, right? Like, as a candidate, she was better than Trump. She was her platform was better, right? But at the end of the day, there's this weird constituency of undecided voters. They don't look like me, but yet I'm framed as the enemy to these moderates. I'm the enemy to moderates because they want me to somehow be like it's a weird paternalistic control. It's an abuse. And I see it happen on both sides. I remember Bernie Bros, right? I didn't support Bernie Sanders in the 2016 election. I voted for him in the primary in 2020, but then he lost, and then I voted for Biden and Harris. What was interesting to me is that there's people that are like, oh, they've been saying on the internet, I'm a Warren supporter. I don't ever recall ever being like, oh, Elizabeth Warren is the person I'm voting for. I actually wrote a piece where I literally said that I was not voting for Biden for the primary, and I was going to vote for Bernie Sanders. I never voted for Elizabeth Warren. She wasn't even my top pick. You all remember Julian Castro was my ideal candidate, but Julian Castro dropped out. Then it was Warren. I wasn't ever crazy about Warren. I never was like, oh, Warren's my choice. That was never my choice. But I think that there's people that have gotten to a point where they don't see nuance, and they don't actually see the multitudes that, a black person that looks like me, come from my background, that I am mixed on all types of eras. And I really am a voter that do not do wave voting as far as individuals. Like, I'm like, okay, this person. Like, I don't vote like that. I vote based on each individual and each race and how that person is. I don't really do this whole, moderates. I have voted for moderates, and I voted for progressives. And I voted for people who were not extremely progressive. I voted for centrists. I voted for different type of people because different elections spelled out different things. In the end, when it was that general election, though, I never voted for Republican. I've never voted for Republican in my life. And I think that's the crazy thing about these conversations, is that you will have moderates or progressives out here mislabeling people because they don't necessarily go their way. So extreme progressives will go, oh, you don't support my white savior candidate. You don't support my, inexperienced, candidate. You don't support this, and you are anti-black, and you're this, and this. They'll go there, right? And then moderates will go, oh, you're not practical. You're supporting white supremacy. You're supporting the vigilantes. It's like, this is not how any of this fucking works. And I thought, right, I'm on Twitter, I'm posting about Malcolm, and there just becomes this whole conversation of, oh, well, what does he think about Conor Lamb? And I'm like, well, I think as a person who covers politics, I know who Conor Lamb is. Let's be clear. I think people misunderstand something. Like, I know who Conor Lamb is as a reporter. I've looked him up. I've read his information. I'm not the voter that you're trying to appeal to. As a journalist, I know who all three of these candidates are. However, voters are not aware of some of these people. In Philadelphia, voters really don't know who Conor Lamb is. That's just a fact. And because that doesn't fit their narrative, and mind you, a lot of these people don't live in Pennsylvania, and I'll get to something about that conversation, but there's this idea that because I'm calling a thing, that somehow, no, you are a plant for John Fetterman. You are supporting John Fetterman. You're a plant for him. You're this, you're that. I was like, no, I'm just saying a fact. And I think this all boils. So this thread about Malcolm came out a week ago. I, of course, critiqued in the concerns of him running and the issues, and it was also about just like how national media have tried to define and take up space in this local race, right? This is a statewide race, and I think that national media has not done a good job of characterizing this race. Because it will have you thinking that Malcolm is like an Obama running. It will have you thinking that Fetterman is like a a Bernie Sanders running, and that Conor Lamb is like a Joe Biden. That's how they're trying to shape it. And I think that that's not necessarily accurate. I don't think that voters are the ones that I have engaged with are seeing it that way, because there's some ambiguity, right? In Philadelphia, there is not this like automatic obsession with Malcolm Kenyatta and seeing him as this progressive that's going to line himself with the squad. That's just not how he's been portrayed in media. That's not the stories. That's not what's happening. Now, this race is a complete 180 for him, but that's not the truth, right? About how voters have seen him over the years and how they have viewed his persona. He's always been the Biden cheerleader. He's always been the Hillary cheerleader. And most people know him for being so closely connected with the Democratic establishment. That is a fair point. That's what is happening in Philadelphia. I don't know what to tell you people who don't live in the state, but that is just a fact. Hate it or love it, that is just the reality. So we go to Fetterman. Fetterman, everyone knows that Fetterman has been framed not framed as for a crime, but his whole demeanor has been brash. His whole demeanor has been outsider. His whole demeanor has been those things. Whether or not those things are legitimate or true, that's a demeanor, that's a persona, right, that he has. He comes from money. He is not, he's portraying himself as a working class guy. He's for working class things. That's his platform, but he comes from money. He's a white man. And there is an issue involving him with a loaded gun, pursuing a unarmed man at the time who's black 9 years ago, that is now become a part of this conversation largely. I simply said, and the point I made is that there's not a lot of conversations about the incident that happened because there is so much ambiguity around how people feel about it. We'll get to what happened in that conversational spaces, but that's there. But the main conversation about Fetterman has been, he appears to be anti-establishment. The Democrats in Harrisburg don't like him per se, or they're not gung-ho supporting him. And there's people that wonder, how does that work? I think a lot of conversation in across Pennsylvania has been a critique of like, he has not talked to the press as much. And that's arguably because he could be a front runner, right? He has not engaged, black voters or there's labor leaders who have pushed that rhetoric that he has not, right? I have not heard that from non-labor or, establishment backers, those people who are with the party. I have not heard that. I can't make something up that I have not heard. I have not heard that critique outside of a lot of the political leaders within Philadelphia. That's just what it is. And then Conor Lamb. Conor Lamb, I think a lot of people see him as the safer option. I've heard that across the board. The framing is that he is a safer guy. He's in Western PA. He is a congressional candidate. The thing is, a lot of people don't know who Conor Lamb is in Philadelphia and across. Like, there are labor groups that are backing him heavy, and they have been pushing his name out. There's been this establishment wing that's really been pushing him. And I mean establishment wing, I'm talking about party leaders. I'm talking about people who was a part of the Democratic State Committee. That's who I'm talking about. They have been pushing him heavily and really trying to get his name out there. But the press has covered this. There's an issue with name recognition. There's also a nearly $3 million fundraising gap between him and Fetterman that he needs to close, and that's looking like it's going to be hard for him to do. Those are the facts. Like, I don't make them up. And I think what happens is that when you're in conversations with surrogates for a candidate that is not doing the best right now in their race, or they don't appear to be the front, runner locally, then anyone who says anything that does not align with their beliefs becomes the enemy. And so basically I become public enemy number one because of the fact that I am here as a journalist and as someone who's observed politics to say, hey, this race is not what you think it is. And again, local Philadelphians and Pennsylvanians understand this. This race is not over. It is a lot going on. There is still 2 months to the primary, close to. There's a lot going on here. And I think national voices have drowned out the voices of local people on the ground. And it's not to say that national help doesn't matter, but it's one thing to help and there's one thing to harm. There's one thing to help and there's one thing to dominate the conversation when you are not the biggest stakeholder in it. The biggest stakeholder in a local race is local voters. Period. National surrogates, great. Cheerlead, fundraise, but you do not have voting equity in this race. You don't have voting skin in this race. You are not the same to local voters. And I don't think these people, right, this moderate coat of supporters that are just unabashingly, unapologetically, unrelentlessly supporting Conor Lamb, and that's their political prerogative, but they don't want to hear anyone say anything that is critical about their faith. And that is where we are in politics. We're in a polarizing system where literally one candidate, your support of one candidate or not support of another candidate completely defines a critic or a dissent voice. Someone told me that me criticizing Kamala Harris is me criticizing a black person in every planet. I had to take a pause. It's a delusion for me. Like, this is where we've gone. You're telling a black person, another black person, tell a black person that you criticizing Kamala or attacking Kamala, you criticizing Kamala is an attack or disrespect to every black person on this planet. That's ridiculous. That's preposterous. And so when you're dealing with crazy, when you're dealing with delusion, when you're dealing with that level of obsession, nothing productive can come from that. And that's what I learned. That's what I realized. So what happened was, after that thread, there was a woman who, she is a big moderate. She calls herself a moderate. She doesn't apologize for it. And that's her right. That's her prerogative. Again, we can all be having these different feelings without having to do the umpteenth most as individuals. So I reached out to her and I said, listen, let's have a conversation. I know you do these Twitter spaces, and I was like, let's have a healthy, productive conversation, because there's some stuff that you're saying, and I just think that it's not a real reflection of what's happening. And I realized that this person was from Ohio, that a lot of these people that was chiming in, I was like, oh, wait a minute, you all do not live in Philadelphia. You all do not live in Pennsylvania. Like, you all are not here. I'm thinking I'm engaging with people on the ground, but I'm like, no, because people locally, if there was ever critiques or anything that I'm saying, I listen to people on the ground. Like, they inform my understanding of these races. Like, that's how I write. That's how I understand what the hell I'm doing. I had to realize I'm the only person that's getting paid and professionally have a job doing this. I don't know if these people are like consultants or, operatives for these people. Are they paid? I don't know. I just feel like if you're going to have that much energy for somebody and do all of that unpaid labor, you might want to get on a campaign. You might want to actually be involved in the process a little bit more than just social media and voting. And even if you're not in a local race, like, why do you have so much of an investment? I get it, but it's just weird. It was just weird to me. But anywho, these people are the diehard fans. There's a stan culture here. And I was very shocked by the stan culture. But there were stans. And I said, okay, well, I just want to come on. Let's have a discussion. I want to provide a local perspective. So this Spaces chat was framed at the PA Senate race, a local perspective. That was the whole point. I was the local perspective. I was the main event. I was a special guest. I was the person that, the reason why all this is happening is because of me. Because one, I offered to have the conversation, and one, I want to talk. Now, the moderator, who I'm not naming because of the fact that she She feels like, she doesn't want to, she feels bad. She's expressed disappointment in how this went down. So I don't want to put her out there. See how you can just, be mindful of other people. So, she wanted to have this conversation. The issue, and I've made this very clear, is that I'm on this call. I am the only person pretty much from Pennsylvania and Philadelphia that is a speaker, which was fine. The issue is that the other co-hosts of this conversation and the majority of the audience were all, national, and let me be clear about national. They didn't work nationally, but they were all basically diehard fans of Connor Lamb. And the co-hosts spent the majority of the time shifting the conversation. What started off as a really good, productive conversation, in my opinion, about the races and Philadelphia and Pennsylvania and these races, which it was going good. I was answering questions. I was providing clarity. It was doing good. But then somewhere in the conversation, there was a turn. And that turn is that they wanted to shift this conversation when they wanted to bait me into accusing a public official of lynching or attempting to lynch a black man. I thought the word lynching, I think, first of all, let me just be very clear. I think lynching, the word, people use this word so much now out of context. And I'm saying to myself, I don't just throw out words like rape or sexual assault or lynching or what's the other one? I don't use, like, there was someone the other day, and I'm bringing it full circle. There was a woman who was saying that she was at the pump during, Ukraine, and she was, the prices of the gas prices are going up, and she was talking about that, and a man said to her, you're about to get raped. And she said that was the first time she'd ever, flinched or something like that because, she understood what they were saying in context. But I was like, who does that? Like, that's such a, why would you say that to a woman? Why would you even say that at all? Like, that's not a good use of that word. Don't say that. Like, if you're not discussing rape as a crime, don't ever use it as some replaced word for something else. That's just disgusting. And I've seen a lot of that. People have used certain terms. Even when, Clarence Thomas said it was a high-tech lynching, when he was talking about Nita Hill and the critiques, high-tech lynching? Why are we using lynching like that? Like, there was no rope. There was none of that happening. That is disgusting. And so I am very much, in general, as a black journalist and just a black person, I typically stay away from using terms like that in situations where that is not, I don't feel like an accurate depiction of the situation. And you have to be very careful when you are a journalist, when you're somebody that's accusing someone of a crime. Right? It's one thing to, critique someone and suggest something about them that's just, whatever, right? It's one thing to say, oh, I think someone's fake, or I think someone's problematic, or I think someone supports policies that are harmful. Like, these are fair critiques and opinions. But when you go into a mode where you're legitimately accusing someone of a violent crime that they were never charged for or convicted of, that mercs into territory where your ass gets sued. And I will never put myself in a position to be sued for something that I, number one, have not spoken with the person about directly, or two, have never engaged with that situation in a way that makes me feel like an expert to do that. I will not do that. That's just not what I'm going to do. And so in this conversation, they're talking about this incident that involved Fetterman in 2009 or 2009? 2013? It was 9 years ago. So I think it was 2013. Yes. And this was when he was the mayor of Broderick. And this incident involved him with a loaded gun going after, he heard shots. He claimed he heard some shots. He calls the police. This is Fetterman. And then he goes after, he sees someone running. And based on his thought of the person running, he goes after that person because he thinks that person might have been the culprit of whatever the gunshots he thought he heard on that scene. So he's going after them. He has a loaded gun in his hand. There is speculation around whether or not he, knew that the person running was black. that individual has said that he do believe, at the time when the reporting was done, he did think that Fetterman thought he was black, but they were trying to frame it whether or not it was racially motivated, because Fetterman claims he did not know the individual was black. And to be clear, when he heard the shots and called the police and went out with the gun, if you're walking out of the situation, you don't know off the riff. Like, in your mind, if you heard something, you call the police first, you're not necessarily running out. Like, in the description, he never described the individual saying, this is a black man outside, I'm going out. Like, that wasn't necessarily what was said. That was never, there's no actual evidence to suggest that outside of what we know, that he knew that that person was black outside of the person who was confronted by him and the police was involved, right? So there's a lot of questions around the nature of that incident. It's a very complicated situation. Some people believe that they say, look, John Fetterman was going after this black man, Black Lives Matter, he was trying to kill him, all of that. That never happened. Him pulling the gun out on him and shooting it at him, like that he never shot the boy. This is none of the things that we knew. Like, this is not facts. But there has been perception about the nature of it. And that's debatable, right? Some people say, listen, he should never did that. He should never have that gun. I mean, I'm not crazy about guns. I don't own a gun. I'm not for guns. That's my opinion. I don't know if whether or not he chased the guy down. He says he didn't. Again, that's something he has to answer to. That's something that voters have to ask him about. I just feel like, for me, I'm not going to accuse. And in my role, I cannot, without criminal charges, without arrest, as a journalist, I cannot accuse somebody of doing a crime of that magnitude. So there were co-hosts on it that was calling him a vigilante. They were saying that, he was doing an attempt to lynch this man. I just think that's a little charged, in my opinion. Like, I cannot put all of that, because to say he was going to do a lynching would then mean that I would have to then suggest that what he did was racially motivated. They're naming Ahmaud Arbery, they're naming Trayvon Martin, and I'm just like, that is not okay. Because in this situation, I just don't, for myself, I don't see this individual in that positioning. I think there was clearly a misunderstanding. I think that clearly there was an assumption. Clearly they found that the individual in question did not have a gun and was unarmed. It was addressed. And at the end of the day, voters at that time, which in that city, right, a majority black city, they definitely heard about this incident. And they decided to reelect this man. He won in a majority black district, in city, whatever. 80% black. They reelected him again. And it literally happened around that time. So when people ask me, well, what are people thinking, how they feeling? I said, well, listen, what do black people think? I'm like, well, listen, I can't speak for what black people think. Not overall. I would say that what I've heard on the ground, there hasn't been a lot of talk about it amongst regular voters, like people that are not politically affiliated. Like, when I'm asking people about the race, they're not being like, oh, didn't he come? Like, they're not doing that. That's being pushed by the Collective PAC, which is a national political action committee that has endorsed, I think they're endorsing Malcolm Kenyatta, but they've used that towards Fetterman. Kenyatta, they've said Kenyatta thinks that was an issue. But, what I will say is that Kenyatta has never criticized Fetterman. He was buddies with Fetterman, taking pictures with him and having great, conversations and supporting him. They were homies until this election. I mean, politics changes things. I wondered to myself, Malcolm had all that time with Fetterman. Like, I haven't spoken to Fetterman. I've not had a conversation with Fetterman. I'm not going to interview him. I have told his people I would like to interview him. I have told Conor Land's people I'd like to interview him. I've told other candidates. We did Austin Davis. Like, I would love to interview these people on my podcast if they're interested and open to having a conversation. I'm here for it. Like, there's nothing, like, I have no dog in the race. Like, I'm open to talking to anybody, and my followers and my listeners and Philadelphia knows this. At the end of the day, what comes of the conversation, if I agree or disagree, is different, but I'm never going to back down from a conversation with somebody I don't agree with. Like, I'm just never going to back down from a civil conversation. Emphasis on civil. A civil, respectful conversation with people I disagree with. I'm never going to run from it. Like, I actually lean in it. I'm like, who want to talk? Let's debate. Let's be healthy. Let's do it in a respectful way. I'm never going to shy from a conversation. I engage with people every day of my life in this business of people who have various different degrees of interest. But you know what? We find some level of common ground and understanding, and we move fucking forward. And my mentality has always been, may the best person win, partner. Like, when I look at this race, I look at it like that. I look at it like, whoever you going for, it's like it's like, basketball team. If you're going for Lakers or the Golden State, the Golden Nuggets, right? If you go for whoever you're going for, may the best man win. May the best person win. Go hard for your fave. Go to the polls and do what you need to do. Oops, some of y'all can't vote in the polls, so you're not determining the race. But for the people who do support who they support who you want to support. Do what you do. Like, it's really that simple. I think this idea of trying to convert people or trying to force people to take positions that lean too extreme to someone's belief system is different, right? Do I think the situation is worth debate and questions? Yes. Should Fetterman talk about it? Yes. Yes. Like, I'm not his campaign manager. But if you're trying to get me to accuse this man and say that this man did an attempted lynching, I think for me that's intellectually dishonest. I'm not going to call it a lynching. I think that, first of all, if I even put that out there, the magnitude of me saying that versus these people who, a lot of them are just on the internet saying whatever all day, every day, they're not suffering the type of repercussions and consequences that I do. I will never put myself in a position where I'm going to be at that level of liability around that. It's one thing to joke. It's one thing to be satirical. It's one thing to whatever. But it's another thing to accuse a senatorial candidate of an attempted lynching as a black man with my platform. I will not do that if that is not what went down. Sorry, it may not fit your perfect political narrative. It may not, but you're not me. Because at the end of the day, I got to go out here and still cover. I still got to provide. I still got to work. I still got to do that. A lot of you all are just on the internet all day arguing on Twitter. And you want to, say that because of the fact I'm doing that, then the conversation shifts. This is when the conversation shifted, y'all. It became, so you're defending and promoting a vigilantist, an attempted lynching. That's what you got out of this? That's what you got out of this? That's what you're going to say because you are thinking you're going to bully me and force me to change my position on not calling it that? You're mad because you want me to be more upset about something because your fave is... Like, I just think it's just very interesting. And I said to myself, because I brought this up to moderates, that you are saying this should be a bigger issue. That this should be the thing. This is the thing that should just stop a race. And you're asking me this, right? You're asking me for my perspective. You spend more time talking about Fetterman than you did Conor Lamb. But if that's the conversation they want to go, I said, okay. So what am I supposed to say here is that what I know about black people, what I know about Democrats, is that Democrats are overwhelmingly forgiving. Moderates typically are. They did not want to entertain any conversation around Hillary Clinton. When there was concerns about the crime bill, when there was concerns, they said, well, black people support the crime bill overwhelmingly, so people need to stop. Okay, cool. So retroactively trying to address previous issues that were moot issues at the time is not the way to go. Got it. Not disagreeing with that, listening to it. Fair, right? So it's like you can't bring up something that someone did 20 years ago. You can't bring up something someone did in the past. The times were different. There was a different era. You can't retroactively try to punish them for something that was understood differently back then. Okay, that is a fair critique. And black folks have been doing that forever. Black folks voted heavily for Hillary Clinton. Black folks voted for Biden, even though he said Obama was articulate and clean and all of these other types of microaggressions, right? That now you're trying to now critique the candidate you don't like now for. It's been done. These issues have happened. And I'm like, Biden said you're not black if you don't vote for him or you vote for Trump or something. You don't get to question people's blackness. That was highly inappropriate. But again, people understood what he was trying to say. People gave him grace. Moderates have given a lot of your faves grace for all types of things. things that I would never understand. And those things would arguably, some people say, were misinterpreted or lacking context. I just think that if you're asking me why this particular issue is this way, is because I think that maybe voters, the context of how they see the situation is different from how gun-ho Conor Lamb supporters see it. That's always going to be the extreme, right? There were Bernie bros that hated Hillary and want to weaponize Hillary's issues in the black community, or what they thought to be, to try to steer voters. And it's always this pattern where race and issues that impact black people are oftentimes manipulated or weaponized in ways to try to skew support one way or the other. And so the question I had, because this is what I was trying to get to, is that are you trying to say that John Fetterman is a white supremacist? Nobody wanted to say that in the conversation. Are you? Because to me, I'm like, listen, we can imply all day. Now let's go there. Are you trying to say that this man is a white supremacist? Are you trying to say that? Because again, by all means, I'm not going to accuse this man of being a white supremacist. I think that his record does not give me that implication. His policies do not give me that implication. I kept asking the question of what policies has he put out that gives you the suggestion that that experience, because I mean, you're trying to imply, if you're saying lynching, that's white supremacy. But nobody said that. No one called him a white supremacist. Because if you're going to say someone is a vigilante that is trying to lynch someone, you're basically going to have to see, because that's what I do, right? Go there. Like, I will say Trump is a white supremacist, right? Trump spent millions of dollars to put an ad to literally get 5 innocent black and brown men incarcerated. He put a target on those men's back. You want to talk about lynchings, right? You want to talk about vigilantism. Like, that's to me, a very clear definition of how you're targeting someone that way. And he did that. And those men were innocent. And he has a history of racism. He's been sued by the Department of Justice. Like, there are real, legitimate information and facts that would suggest white supremacy. So if you're accusing this man of that, then call him a white supremacist. That's what you think. No one on that call said he was a racist or called him a white supremacist. No one said that. They said white savior, they said these other things, but they did not go there. So then my whole point was, okay, where are his policies? Like, if you're concerned and you're saying this about him, are you trying to then make the inference that that's going to influence his policies? Because then if you think it is going to influence his policies or any of those things, then that will give you the sentiment that this is a dangerous vote. I was asking them to spell that out because, again, I'm not his campaign manager. I am trying to understand what these supporters think. I'm coming in in many ways as a journalist. It was learning. It was a sociological experiment for me to learn and understand the thinkings of people. And it's also the study of communication, of like confirmation bias, that it shows up in different ways. We all have biases, right? We all do. I do. Everyone do, right? But it was interesting in that framing that there was like literally a desire, right, for me to be quote unquote objective. And I wish people stop using it. See, this is the thing. Real person, journalists, and media professionals know that objectivity is nothing that we say in journalism. It's a very irrelevant word. It's very irrelevant at this point. It's almost like saying liberal. I think liberal is kind of irrelevant to use now. Either it's progressive or conservative or moderate. I don't even know if the word liberal, even is a word that makes sense nowadays to use. But there's words that ages and is irrelevant or it doesn't. To educate some of you people, objectivity is a very racially charged word in journalism because of the fact that it's been used to weaponize marginalized communities from being able to actually cover a thing or call a thing a thing. So the problem is that people say objectivity. I'm like, well, what are you asking for? Objectivity does not exist in human beings. Like journalists, like this whole be objective, like you are using words and lingo in textbooks that are teaching journalism back in the day. That is literally led and driven by white men, mostly white cishet men that are trying to control how media is coverage. There's no such thing as objectivity in journalism. People strive it, right? But that doesn't even make sense. Like, of course, your lived experiences. Like, how do you seek objectivity in journalism when you want diversity in a newsroom? Crickets. How do you say you want a room that's diverse but objective? Do you understand that the term objectivity in journalism was used to justify, in many cases, the need not to have diversity in newsrooms? Because the argument was it doesn't matter who covers it because you're supposed to cover it this particular type of way. So whether you have a black person, gay person, a woman there, it doesn't really matter. That was the argument, because this idea is objective, meaning that you completely take yourself out of it. But like, what does that even mean then, right? Like, to a certain extent, taking yourself out of it means being, not using I statements, unless that is what you're doing. But I think a lot of people are misinformed. Media illiteracy, journalism illiteracy is real. Media illiteracy is on both sides. It's in Democratic spaces and Republican spaces. And it's funny because objective to people have oftentimes been weaponized when only in situations where you don't feel like a point or a side that desires your interest seeks you. If I got on that, nobody in that damn room was objective. And yet the argument becomes the journalist that when journalists do not confirm or appeal to whatever the opinions you want as facts, then all of a sudden you question their objectivity. That's why objectivity does not exist. The term is to be fair, accurate, and or balanced. And you have to be mindful about when you are balanced, right? Like, if there's a conversation where you're covering incidents of white supremacy, if you're talking to a marginalized individual that is talking about white supremacy, that does not mean I need to go call a white supremacist and give them the same equal footing. Because the power dynamics in that situation does not support the actual marginalization being addressed. There has to be equity considered. So no, absolutely not. It's not objective. It's not balanced to give both sides, depending on who the sides are, the same equal footing if you understand how power dynamics work. That's just a fact. So the funny thing is that in a conversation, in a room where I am surrounded with co-hosts, that there are, let's say, 4 people on that panel. There's myself, 2 co-hosts, and the moderator. The 3 out of the 4 of them are diehard Conor Lamb fans and stans that support him. Anything I said that would have given nuance or a different perspective about the one candidate that they do not like, they saw that as not being objective. Do you see the problem there? Like, do you see the problem there? Like, if I literally spent my time confirming and not critiquing or just giving nothing but attack or critique or not even trying to explain any of the conversation, I am showing that, hey, here's a valid point, but consider this. I am literally being fair and trying to provide the accuracy of what's happening on the ground. They didn't hear what they wanted to hear, and so as a result, it became ad hominem attacks. So I was called a John Fetterman plant, which is hilarious. My followers, y'all know this is hilarious, right? I'm a John Fetterman plant. They were like, oh, he's a Warren supporter. And I'm like, why do y'all care? First of all, I was not a crazy Warren supporter at all. I didn't vote for Warren. By the time Philadelphia came, I don't even know if she was on the ballot or not by then. Maybe she was. I don't even remember. The crazy part is, and what makes politics messy, is that they're so stupid with their logic about some of this stuff. So Mayor Jim Kenney endorsed Elizabeth Warren for president, but he is endorsing Conor Lamb for Senate. That's how politics work. Sometimes it does not fit your little Lily Rose perspective, right? Because arguably they're assuming that the kind of people that are supporting Conor Lamb are the kind of people supporting Joe Biden. It's mixed. It's very more complicated. You can't push and shove it down people's throat. And I think the issue is that they are so obsessed and so enamored in this man that they don't want to hear anything that is not a praise or a complete utter attack on who they think his challenger is. Then suddenly it doesn't make sense. And I was just there to give them the real talk, no chaser, about some of the legitimate concerns on the ground, but they didn't want to hear it. It was funny because all 3 of the people were not from Pennsylvania or Philly, but they really wanted to tell me about what I was seeing. And that was where the gaslighting was at. It's like, you're not here. You don't get paid to interview people. You don't actually have any skin in the game when it comes to the direct work that it takes to talk to all the campaigns. So it's weird because I have to engage with all three of the campaigns, and I'm learning things about each of them from their supporters and different things from folks involved on the ground. The crazy part is that they're not engaging with any of these other campaigns, so the conversation was a waste of time slightly. I think for me, I'm always going to learn something out of something. So what I learned was that there's an extreme moderate code that I think is going to actually alienate voters. And I don't think they realize it. I don't think they realize that a lot of voters are undecided and they're going to be critical about people that they're told to support and vote. And it's clear that in Pennsylvania that at the end of the day, Conor Lamb did not get the Democratic State Committee endorsement. And while they tried to say, yes, we understand, but moving along, it's like, no, but that's a big damn deal. Because the narrative that he is there, like, how do you explain that? How do you explain that? How do you explain those people supporting Fetterman like that? I mean, even Malcolm getting a 40, right? How do you explain that? And that's amongst, Democratic State Committee people. Those are people that are literally, like, invested in the political atmosphere in our state, and they could not come to a consensus around Conor Lamb. That's a really big damn deal. I was trying to make that point, and they kept saying, yeah, I know, but he had the plurality of the votes. Yes, he did, but almost doesn't count because he's not going to get that. And they were like talking about, Shapiro. I said, the gubernatorial candidate is not endorsing a senator. He's not. Austin Davis, as you all know on my podcast, because see, we talk here on Ernestly Speaking. We actually do the research. We actually listen. We actually, wrestle, right, with these ideas. So the fact is that I asked Austin Davis, I asked him, because he's on the ticket with Josh Shapiro. It was a really great conversation. I asked him, I said, listen, are you all going to endorse the Senate? And he said, no, they're staying out of that race. They're going to support the Democrat that wins the primary. So whoever wins the primary in May, right? That person is going to be the person the party has to unify behind and back. And they will. They have no other choice. Because we got a midterm election. And people better stop. Because whoever gets that win at primary, I'm going to vote for them to save the damn republic. And so if Conor Lamb wins, I'm voting for Conor Lamb. If Malcolm miraculously wins, I'm voting for Malcolm. If Fetterman wins, I'm voting for Fetterman. That's just what it is. Now, who I decide to vote for in the primary, it is who it is. But at the end of the day, it don't matter until November. The primary matters. Figure out who you want. But whoever gets it, we all got to make sure that we're not letting a Republican win. Because if it's Dr. Oz, who's a goddamn Republican nominee, y'all better giddy up. Because he's got money. And that's what I'm saying. All of this talk is all of this talk. But who got the coins? Get money. Get money. Seriously, get money. Step your bread up. Step your paper up. I'm crunk because I'm just like, all this argument, it's not sticking. And I think that there was some hard truths. And I did talk to the moderator, and the moderator and I spoke after all of this, because I was a little disappointed. And we both understood there were some issues with the way that conversation went. But at the end of the day, you all don't have a voting stake in this. But I'm going to tell you is that the moment this person wins the primary, if you all attack this person outside of Pennsylvania, you're going to cost the Democrats the Senate seat in Pennsylvania. If national media, if national folks and trolls and moderate coats and groups are going to attack this person, because this is what reminded me of what happened with Hillary, where Hillary was clearly the presumptive nominee and the front runner. And I remember being like, if you all keep bashing and punching and kicking and doing all this to Hillary, the logic is that she's going to have a hard time in her general election. If if Fetterman is a presumptive, lead or front runner, if you all keep attacking and bashing and doing all this internally amongst other Democrats and voters, how do you think this is going to fare out by the time we get to the general? Because Republicans, they can try to talk about race and all these issues, but we all know that, first of all, Pennsylvania Republicans are in no place to talk about race at all. And I think you got to understand the importance of how this operates over here. They don't talk about race. They steer from those conversations. They really don't get involved in race. They really try to push that out because their records speak for themselves. So it's a lot going on. It's a lot going on. And, for me, I just have to say, listen, I'm built for this. I've been dealing with critique my entire career. Critique has made me better. Critique has given me perspective. I think that what these people don't understand is that there's now a new wave of people that know who I am, and they're going to find out and learn about my work and understand me in different ways. But if you're in a tunnel vision of only seeing things in the eyes of whatever the Vice President Kamala Harris thinks or what Conor Lamb thinks, you are mistaken. And I've covered enough to know that this is how you get Trump. This shit right here is how you get Trump. This is how we got Trump in 2016. Because there were people that were so ignorant to listening to different views that was telling them there was some smoke. And nobody wanted to listen to it. Nobody was trying to hear it because it didn't satisfy what they wanted to hear. I remember people laughing at local reporters I know across Pennsylvania who was saying something's going up in Trump. There's Trump country out here. Nobody gave them the platform. I'm telling you, I think about Holly Otterbein, who wrote her piece about York County when she was at Philly Mag. Now she's at Politico. And I remember people being like, oh my goodness, why they keep promoting Trump like he's got a shot? He's not going to win. Blah, 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 blah. I just remember all of the critiques she faced. I also remember a lot of critiques that other reporters were getting. And I just remember them just being like, and I remember being, a gun-ho Hillary supporter. I was blinded in the beginning. My husband was, working on the campaign, and I was very much like, Hillary got this, right? She's a Clinton. That's what I thought. But then when I started to really begin to get into it and do opinion pieces and look into it towards the end, it started being like, yo, something's happening here. Like these crowds, y'all, these crowds, this ain't all bought. Because in the beginning, I remember when he came down the elevator and announced he was running, right? And he made the Mexicans are rapists and all that racist ass comment, right? I remember hearing that they said that he got extras to come and support him. And I was like, okay, these are bought. Like, this is bought hype. But then the crowds got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I was like, this ain't bought. There's something happening here, y'all. Y'all not paying attention. But we was in this era, right? Everybody was like, oh, of course the countries. This is not our America. This is not our values. Really? They're not? Okay. Fuck around and find out. And we fucked around, we found out, and we got Donald Trump. And I feel like in this situation in Pennsylvania, moderates, especially moderates, people that go by this moderate label, which they have to understand that if you spend so much time talking about what shouldn't be rather than what is, you're never going to get to what can be. And that's just something I've learned in life and in politics and everything else. And, just to be clear, I don't support lynchings. I don't support vigilantism. I'm not going to, falsely accuse somebody of committing a racist, white supremacist crime and as a journalist and not consider the legal ramifications that can come dealing with powerful individuals and public figures. I'm not going to do that. Did not support Warren for president. I'm not a John Fetterman plant. I think that what I will say is that observing these politics, I think if this is what if these people reflect Conor Lamb supporters, Conor Lamb's team better figure it out. I don't believe they do. I think these people are an extreme. I think they're an extreme case. I think every electorate or voter, well, they're not even voters in this race. They can't vote in this race. But I would say every politician probably has like a gun-ho core group of folks that are doing the most. But I think, what's concerning is that it could get like Bernie Sanders. I remember Bernie Sanders supporters just really began to defy him. Like, that was the one thing I couldn't stand was Bernie Bros during 2016. I mean, the way they would harass anybody who was not, I remember the harassing of Black voices. I just remember being like, I would criticize Bernie or something, and the way they would target me online on Facebook, and I don't know if I was on Twitter. I was on Twitter, but I don't remember if it was happening so much on Twitter, maybe. But I remember Facebook specifically, like, it was just always, oh, you're voting against your own. You're voting against your own interest. I remember just all of that kind of talk me down stuff, and I'm seeing that with Conor Lamb supporters. It's really weird where there's just people that's just like, it just choosing to read. Like, I mean, some of these people are just very delusional about how they're reading assessments or critiques. It's like, I say, I can't speak on, I'm not going to speak on that. I'm not on this campaign. You're a plant. I say, hey, I can't discuss that. I can't win that. Oh, you're supporting lynching. This is the wildest shit. And then the grotesque immaturity and the other crazy thing. Like, they were saying, like, Mr. Johnson and I got a GoFundMe for our wedding, which is preposterous. Like, we did not do a GoFundMe for our wedding. Like, what are y'all talking about? Like, these people, and then you have to remind yourself, and this is what I've reminded myself, is that I've been through cycles of dealing with the delusional. And that is delusional progressives. Y'all remember this when it was all Larry Krasner supporters and they were trying to, get me together, right? I dealt with this with, the K-Hive, right? They got upset about the critiques I had for for Vice President Kamala Harris. But at that time, she was a candidate. I mean, they're still like going over tweets I said in 2019. And I'm like, yeah, I said in 2019. 3 years ago, that's how I felt. 2 years ago, that's how I felt. Like, that's what I was thinking at the time. I just don't get it. Like, I'm like, the woman has won. She's won. I voted for her. What are we doing? You're still mad? You're still bothered. Like, after all of the things that happened, she's won, and you're talking about tweets that are 2 years old, 3 years old. What's wrong with you all? Like I don't get it. But what do you want? Do you want me to convert into the K-Hive? Do you want me to be a part of the K-Hive? I'm not going to do that. I'm not a part of any fan club for any elected official except Letitia James. No, but like, I'm not going to stand. I don't stand for any of them like that. Like, I voted for Biden, and yeah, but I also had issues with Biden in the primaries. I had issues with his past, some of the issues. But it is what it is, right? But I move on. You move on. You move on. You move forward. Like, what the hell are y'all doing? Like, I just think it's wow, yo. And it's like, is any of this moving the election? The time you're spending arguing with a person that gets paid to, like, give opinions about politics. Like, I get paid to do this. This is my job. Like, I get paid to have opinions about politics. I get paid to weigh in on elections. I get paid to cover elections. Like, this is what I do for a living. What do you do for a living? I think everybody's trying to do everyone's job. Like, I'm not trying to be anybody's campaign manager. I like, they would ask me, like, I'm not the campaign manager, but I feel like they're trying to be on this, like, they're like surrogates. They're like low-key, like, working on Conor Lamb's staff, but unpaid staff. Like, get your money. Get him some money while you at it. Get him some money. Donate money to him. Keep donating money to him. Help your fave. I mean, I guess the one thing we all agreed on in that conversation was that Malcolm Kenyatta he shouldn't be in the race. Like, at this point, he should just drop out. I guess that's common ground. I just think they were just mad because, I wasn't going to tell them that I wasn't going to be delusional. I wasn't going to lie to them. And I think, honestly, sometimes it's hard for people when it comes to races like this, But, listen, you've done this. When you've done this as long as I have, you've seen everything. And then you move on. So that's what I'm going to do. God bless. So I interviewed Alexandra Hunt. She's running for Congress. You all saw that interview I did with her. She is a Drexel Temple alum. TU for those people that go to Temple, like my brother. She is a first-time candidate. She's 28 years old. She used to be a stripper, which she did stripping to pay the bills when she was an undergrad. She's originally from Virginia. She went to school in Virginia, came to Philadelphia for her master's and stayed. And now she's running against Congressman Dwight Evans, who's a longtime political powerhouse, right? She has gotten close to, I think she's raised around close to 500,000 in fundraising. And Dwight has also raised 500,000. She's getting close to, matching him on that raised money. So it's an interesting time. It's an interesting time for that race. It's a very competitive race. They're not the only ones running. A man named Michael Cogbill, a black man who's really close with labor, is also running. There's not so much money, I feel like, is going in his race. And so I haven't really heard too much about it. I know he's doing like fish fries and trying to stack that bread because he's going to need it in this race. But right now, the biggest challenge to White Evans' seat is this 28-year-old white woman, this millennial, right? So I interviewed her, asked her some straight up questions, and it was an interesting conversation. And, you know, people were like, hey, why did you interview her? Because she's an interesting candidate. Listen, I do get the vote. I am in that congressional district, so I'm going to have to vote for either three of these candidates. I'm not disclosing who I'm voting for right now, but I am going to say that I am leaning towards a candidate personally. But I do think what's important, and what I will say is that I think, you know, congressional races are 2 years. And you get 2 years to do your thing, right? You get 2 years to make a case. You get 2 years. And I will say that, you know, I don't know if Alexandra Hunt will win, right? Because the demographics, right? See, and this is the thing. I always talk about nuance here. I think that her platform is definitely better than Dwight Evans. I think platform-wise, her platform speaks more to me than Dwight Evans' platform does. Period. Like hands on. I like her platform more than I like Dwight Evans' platform. But my opinion about platforms aside, I think that it's just a matter of how this is going to go. And I've asked her this, and I think this is her biggest challenge, right? Is that with a platform like that, is she the person that voters will go for with it? Because she is a white millennial woman who is in politics, who's running for the first time, right? Is she the answer to him? That's going to be her biggest challenge, you know? And she's also a transplant. She's not from Philadelphia. And she hasn't been around Philly that long. So I think that while she's raised some good money, that I don't know if a lot of the national buzz around her is going to play a role and going to translate to her support. Because, you know, this is interesting. It's either going to be a close race or he's going to crush her. I don't see the race being either way. Either it's going to be a straight up crush or it's going to be a close race. Or either way. Like either she wins, but it's going to be close to him, or it's going to be a complete and utter girl bye from voters, right? I know there are some black voters who I've spoken to that's just like, look, I mean, Dwight don't hurt nobody. Is how they say it. That's subjective. Depending on who you ask, you know, Dwight Evans has not been the firecracker that I think a lot of people would like to see in Philadelphia. And in a congressional district that is heavily Democratic, that's very, very Democratic, he could really push the agenda forward a little bit more. And I think that's been a critique. I don't know if he's going to listen from that and take that and do better with that. I don't know. I mean, it's up in the air. So it's a lot to reflect on, to consider. That I will say. But that being said, you know, this primary has been nothing but a circus thus far. And it's going to bring out, because of the U.S. Senate race, it's going to bring out different types of voters. And so given the height of that, it's going to be interesting to see that in the sense of folks running to the polls to vote for a certain candidate, will that make them also vote differently for a congressional candidate? Like, we don't know. So there's a lot of question marks there. But all I will say is that people should definitely keep an eye on this race, because I don't know if it's as predictable as people might assume. So, Jussie Smollett. Hopefully this is the last time I'll be talking about Jussie Smollett on this podcast, or, you know, unless anything happens between now and then. The shocker, right? I wrote a piece for Rolling Stone, big, huge piece that explored my theory behind why I think Smollett staged a hoax and what led to his downfall. Essentially, my take is that I think right-wing media really made it seem like, and I think a lot of people, right, has assumed that all of this is happening because of the fact that he wants to be the victim, that he was seeking to be the victim. And I think that the reality was that he wanted to be the hero. And people don't understand what I mean by that, but I was saying that like we need to go back a little bit into 2019. January of 2019. Let's bring it back. This was before Lil Nas X had hit the scene. Billy Porter's like reemergence in pop culture had not taken off fully yet. Frank Ocean was out, but not out. And so there wasn't like, he wasn't like the quintessential out gay entertainer that many people would have expected or wanted from him, right? And that's his business, that's his prerogative, right? But Jussie Smollett was. Jussie Smollett was out. He was out on Ellen DeGeneres. He was, just the guy that everybody knew, right? He was on the hottest show in America. Had been on the hottest show, right? Empire was a big deal back then. He had a promising career. Everything about him was like, when you thought of black gay celebrity in Hollywood at the time, he was definitely the first person people would point to as a new face, a fresh face. He was, good looking. Everything was working in his favor. And I think he had, what I told one of my good friends about earlier this week, was that he had the Catherine McPhee issue. Which is, if you all remember Catherine McPhee, she was on, American Idol. And then she got on this show, this other big show, which I don't even, Smash, it was called. It's called Smash. And, she had this thing where people thought that this show, right, was going to be her big breakthrough, because they were trying, like a lot of people had this Catherine McPhee. She's this great singer. And they just really thought that Catherine McPhee was going to be this big thing. And she just didn't, it didn't happen. Like she didn't have that crossover. Like she was able to take it to the next level. And that transition didn't happen. I think that a lot of times with stars, right, there's a star you like that has a moment on a show or have a career, and it never really takes off past that. Like I remember Zac Efron, right, from High School Musical. Now he was able to have a transition out of that to get into that career. Vanessa Hudgens, a little there. But like Corbin Bleu, he's a Broadway actor now. But like, I would say Zac Efron may have had it, but a lot of others didn't. Some people, had a moment. They were liked on a show. They tried to do their own thing, and it just really did not hit the way they wanted to. And I think Jussie had that fear that, oh my goodness, this might backfire. Like not backfire, but this might not, I might not be able to break past this. Because Bashir Gray, before he had his legal issues, he was doing it, right? He got in a New Edition movie. Like that was a big hit. The New Edition story, that was a really great film. It had a moment there. And I feel like there was other things, right? Like the other actor, Trey, who got married to other woman, Grace, and they got married. Now she doing her thing. A lot of other Empire stars have kind of had some more movement. I think Jussie was trying to. He just didn't. He was supposed, like, for all of the attention he was getting, you would have thought that his career was going to be very different than what it was by 2019. It didn't happen. And his album, he was with a record label with Columbia Records, that fell short. Like a lot of stuff just didn't pop for him. And I think he was getting desperate. I think that he was looking for an opportunity to have a moment. And so I think that he personally, in my opinion, staged his hoax as a way to revamp his image. And I think it was a way to keep the narrative going, because his entire persona has always been, he wasn't the weakest link. He wasn't the weak, fragile gay trope that a lot of times happens, or softer. He always wanted to be that person that was confident, charismatic, sexual, confident, all of the things that is a role model to so many people. I was inspired by his whole character on Empire. The first season, I was like, hell yeah. Like I just really was rooting for him. And I think that throughout the show, there was different things that was going on with his character that I didn't like. And I think Lee Daniels just did the most at a point. Like it was like, remember, I don't know if y'all remember Empire like that, because a lot of people will joke and say that it was a show they watched and then they missed one episode and never went back. That wasn't for me. Like I've watched every episode of Empire to the very end. Like I was into it. Like I really was. I like watched. I just was like, this is my show. Like I never stopped watching Empire until the very end. I mean, I watched every show from the beginning to the finale. I really hated the way the show ended, because it was obvious the pandemic messed up the rollout. But everyone's moved on. It's been 2 years, and the show goes on, right? So my mindset and my take was that I think he wanted to create a narrative around himself. And I don't think he ever wanted arrests to be made. I don't think he ever wanted that drama because again, he was banking on the way that hate crimes are done all the time. Like normally people, there's a hate crime is committed, police don't really care as long as the person's alive. And then people go about their merry way and then he gets to tell the story of how he fought back and the attention he would have gotten, the sympathy, but then the ability for him to look like a fighter, a champion. Because when you look at those interviews, like I'm the gay Tupac, he was trying to make himself a hero here. When you look at that interview he did with Robin Roberts for GMA, he was still trying to put on that persona. So that's why I think he did it. Now that being said, I think there's a lot of narcissism and arrogance and a lot of things that shaped his issue here. The judge has sentenced him to 5 months in prison. 30 months probation, I think it was. He's got a long stint, like 2.5 years probation. He's got to pay over $100,000 to the city of Chicago, which is my birthplace. He's got to do a lot of things. And I think people were shocked that he ended up getting jail time. I don't think a lot of people thought that he was going to get jail time. I think a lot of people were like, oh, like crimes like that don't ever get all that. But I think the issue is that, and again, I'm not defending, right? I think, and I've said this before, and I want to say this again. I don't think Jussie, going to jail is going to rehabilitate him or help him. I just think incarceration, in this situation is not the answer. But to understand or explain what could have been a rationale behind why he did get sentenced, right? I think part of the issue was that this man will not admit that he lied. It's really weird because like his supporters are like saying, right, free Jussie. He shouldn't have to go to jail for this crime. And I agree with that. I agree that he should not have to go to jail for this. I don't think jail time was necessary. I don't think incarceration for this is there, right? But the issue is that it's like this weird dynamic of supporters for Jussie. Because like half of them are like, don't incarcerate him. He made a mistake. He should never did it. But then there's the other side that's like, he's completely innocent. He is a victim of attacks. He should be freed. And I'm sitting here like, ooh, that's a hard dilemma, right? Because half of the supporters that want Jussie to get help also believe that Jussie is not telling the truth and that this was wrong, right? And so I'm on a team of people where, like, I think that Jussie should not be incarcerated. I think that Jussie should get help. And I think that at the end of the day, being incarcerated for 5 months behind bars isn't going to give him any time or support to actually do anything, right? But at the same time, there are supporters on his end that do not like people like me saying that, because me believing that he lied, which he did, is falling within this narrative. And I'm like, no, it does not. Like, at the end of the day, he has not really convincingly made the case of why that did not happen. It just does not show that. I'm not seeing it. I just don't see how that just happened the way he's described it. Something is fucking missing. And either the story that we know, the hoax staging did not happen, right? Maybe, okay. But if that did not happen, the story that he is saying also did not happen. So if something else is at play, he's had ample amount of time to tell us what's all happening. But something about this is just not there. And maybe we'll never know all the details. But what we do know is that the story that Jussie has told, the narrative that he's went with, it has not stuck. And so unless there is another shoe drop, which is at this point, it's over, we've never gotten there. And I think that's the truth that we have to come to acknowledge. And I think some of his supporters that think he's innocent has to acknowledge. Now, his family's going to ride or die for him. And so I know Journey and Jack and all of them, Jazz, they're going to do what they're going to do to support their sibling. And I get it. But understand that outside of his family, a lot of y'all just saying he's innocent. Where? I just don't see it. A lot of people don't see it. Even people who don't want incarceration for him. Because let me be clear, I don't want incarceration. I don't think that's the answer. But it's hard to say somebody needs to get help when they don't actually think they need help. It's like weird because it's like everyone, like even people like me, like we're saying he needs help, we need this, but it's hard to like say that to somebody who can't even come to that. Because I wonder if he would have just simply said, "Listen, I did it. I was in a rough part of my life. I was doing drugs. My career wasn't happening. It wasn't that I needed money." Because I think the judge even agrees. Like, I don't think it was about money. All this, he needed more money to build empire. I don't think money was ever the issue. I think that he needed attention. He wanted attention. And someone said, well, where does this come in his background? All I got to say is that there was an incident many years ago where he lied that his brother was in a car. He had a DUI incident, and he said he gave his brother's name, y'all, not his own. He threw his own brother under the bus for a crime that he committed. That's not cool. So it's like real rap. It's really hard. Like, we saw this. There is an example previously in his life where he has lied in ways that could have caused harm to somebody else. So that was not addressed then. And I feel like his family knows some things. They ain't gonna tell us, and that's none of our business, right? But clearly there's some shit going on. The outbursts at the court about, he's not suicidal, he's innocent. Look, listen, he's going to a Chicago jail. And it's not uncommon that there are things that happen to people in jails. We remember Sandra Bland, right? We remember incidents where people were in police custody and things happened to them and people say it's mysterious. It's not surprising. I wasn't shocked that he said it. I think putting up the black fist and trying to really make himself like he is this political prisoner, I think that's alarming and kind of weird and needs to stop, right? I just think that he really wants to frame himself like he's this political prisoner. And I'm just kind of like, no. There's been questions about why the brothers were not, in trouble. For starters, the brothers did the hoax, but they didn't write the false police report. I mean, he lied on them. He said they attacked him. They didn't technically attack him on the merits to which he described it, but they didn't write the police report. Like, should they get in trouble for the attack? Well, no, because technically they were paid to attack him, so they can't be charged for an attack that wasn't a real attack. So that's the issue. The issue is that there's no way that in this situation they could get in trouble. Because here's the thing, people stage hoax every day. You see people, like Punk'd on Ashton Kutcher Punk'd, right? I'm telling my age. Many years ago with Ashton Kutcher, there was that show called Punk'd, right? And he would prank people and there would all be these fears, these hoax. It's all fun and games until somebody quote unquote get hurt. The moment that he had went that direction and filed an actual police report, that's the part where it becomes a crime. The stuff that happened on his own, like if he got attacked and hit, and he went on social media and said, y'all, I got attacked, and he never filed the police report, and people was like, oh my God, Jussie, we feel bad for you, that's horrible, yada, yada, yada. It would have never been a criminal matter. It only became a criminal matter when he filed the police report. He fucked himself up when he went down that path. Because everything before then was simply apologies, bandages, going to the hospital, sympathy, going viral. And honestly, that attention alone could have made it better, right? Because if the police reached out to him, right, and he said, look, I don't want to file a police report, I feel like at that point, he could have just not did it. He could have just said, listen, I just want to move on with my life. I'm not trying to go there. I'm just, whatever. People may have said, I don't know if that's true. And they may have questioned it. But you know what? He would have probably fared away from that. It would have not been as crazy, perhaps. Maybe. I don't know. But at the end of the day, we know he would have never had to go through a trial. Because again, there was no criminal action at that point. So I think that's the just to clarify that, because people have asked a lot about that. Like, do you think that the brothers should have, whatever? At the end of the day, the brothers were scammers. They problems within themselves. They're going to get what's coming to them in their own due time if that's the kind of people they are. But at the end of the day, Jussie made this happen. He put money behind it. He made this stuff move. You know, he wrote a check. That check is sus. I'm sorry. That check is sus. It was sus. It was sus. I mean, he just did not have enough credibility. He just could not back those things up. And, you know, I think that that's the real question. So, I don't know. I hope that he's safe. I hope nothing happens to them behind bars because we're all keeping our eyes open, right? But, I mean, he's going to try to appeal it. Y'all know how this going to work. It's just, we know how this going to work. Police lied on this 12-year-old boy in Philadelphia who was killed. You know, the officer involved in this got fired from the Philadelphia Police Department. There was a 12-year-old boy who was initially accused of carrying a gun in South Philly. And initially the argument was that police shot him behind the back, killed him in cold blood. But he had a gun in his possession and that, you know, he was armed. And so that was the rationale. We don't know how he got the gun or what was going on. Well, come to find out, the gun left his possession and he was several blocks away from the weapon at hand, unarmed, and they still decided to gun this individual down. There's been a lot of uprise and critiques and concerns about how this has been discussed. They say, oh, he has a troubled background. He has this, that, and third. It's like, okay, all of that, you know, sure. But at the end of the day, the police shot an unarmed 12-year-old child behind his back. Okay, so it wasn't like it was forward-facing. This did not have to happen. This child did not have to die. And, you know, once again, I tell people that police reports, you know, you just can't believe police reports off the jump. You just can't. It's just not a good way. It's not a good look. We just cannot keep believing police reports like they're fact and publishing stories and narratives because then it creates this narrative that gets people going. So, you know, I do believe that there might most likely be criminal charges filed against this officer, and I think that needs to happen, and that maybe there'll be justice served, whatever that looks like. But this is this unnecessary life that happened, and it's terrible. This Don't Say Gay bill has passed in Florida, and basically it's trying to prohibit the conversation of sexuality and gender identity, these types of conversations within the LGBTQI community, anything discussing it from schools, from public schools. This is disgusting. This is gross. Disney has been under fire lately for pushing a lot of the, you know, putting campaign money behind Republicans who support this bill. They've been called out for even their own internal homophobia within certain departments. Pixar's called them out for basically trying to cover any, like not to try to hide or delete any type of same gender-loving interactions on the movies that they do that are gay. Like, even though there may be gay characters or inferences, they have done things to stop intimate scenes in the Pixar films. And there's been direct complaints from Disney executives about that. So they've called them out on it. And it just goes to show that sometimes the places that want the gay dollar or want LGBTQIA support and money don't often have our best interests at heart. And it's disheartening because I've been a Disney fan forever. And I'm not necessarily saying boycott Disney. I think Disney's trying to get it, you know, they're trying to reckon with this. And I'm just observing from afar. But I'm shout out to the staff at Disney, at Pixar, who is fighting back against the leaders that be and calling them out on this. So it doesn't seem like it's an issue only for them, but you know, you have leaders like that Bob Iger who was there, who did some of those decisions before the new president came in. So it's a lot to wrestle with, but we're keeping our eye on it. You know, I'll say this about Russia. There's been a lot of conversations about the oil situation. As a person who doesn't drive myself, you all know that. Mr. Johnson drives, you know, occasionally when we're going long distances. But, you know, the gas thing is wild. But what I will say is that what's wilder than those prices is these Russian bans. Y'all, this virtue signaling, this shit reminds me of freedom fries. This shit reminds me of these very over-the-top performative things. Now, there's one thing for banks to divest economically from Russia to hurt their economy, which says a lot. But people out here like, oh, I'm not going to buy Russian vodka, or they're not going to go to Russian restaurants. This xenophobia, right, towards Russian people. You know, I have this sense that this is going to be, somebody's going to hurt someone that's Russian, that's innocent, that has not done anything, and this type of behavior is disgusting, and it's like this is just ridiculous. And we see this. This is like this level of energy around Russia. Like, no Russian vodka, no Russian, products. I think someone had a Russian cream black and mild and they X'd off the Russia on it. Like, what are y'all doing? What are y'all doing? There was rumors that they were going to take Anastasia off Disney Plus, which wasn't true, but they were like, they're going to take Anastasia off of it because it's a Russian. Like, this is just way too much. It's one thing to divest economically in anything that's going to support Russia during this time, but it's another thing to just be banning random Russian shit. Like these Russian Americans who are like minding their business, creating a small business, supporting the economy, minding their business, like to boycott their restaurants and treat them like the reality of like saying I'm going to ban Russian arts and culture as if that's taking a stance against what's happening. I just think that's it's not useful. I remember French fries, like freedom fries. Like, what are y'all saying? Like, this is such virtue signaling. Like, it's not productive. Okay? And to be honest, let's be keeping it 100. Tito's vodka is where your ass should have been anyway. Made in Texas. Made in Austin. Okay? Like, I like Tito's vodka personally. That's my favorite vodka. I think Tito's is my favorite, and it's American. But I'm not saying that you need to boycott Russian vodka on some performative shit. I'm just saying that you should have been drinking Tito's anyway. But I digress. What's really concerning to me is that there's more conversation about banning Russian products than talking about, Brittany Griner, who is one of the biggest, like she's like the LeBron of the WNBA right now. A talented women's basketball player. She's black and she's queer, and she's currently being detained by Russia on some bullshit, to be honest. She had a vape. And that's what they're alleging, right? We don't know for a fact because Russia does lie, right? We know this. I don't have to say this, but like if this woman was white, if this was a white athlete, we would be having a different conversation. I just don't think we're going up loud enough. We're not talking about it loud enough. And, as a journalist, I make it a point that when I see stories or issues that I care about or involving people that I think deserves the coverage, I'm going to do my part, right? And I'm going to do my part in my own community. And I made it a point to say that while there are some people that have been talking about this attainment and talking about, the history of anti-LGBTQI sentiment in Russia, which are facts, right? This is a very homophobic, racist, anti-Semitic country, Russia is. We need to talk about what's going on in our country when it comes to LGBTQ rights. Brittany isn't considered and treated as a full citizen, given full rights in this country, as we see the Equality Act has not passed, right? The Equality Act would, as you all know, is currently tied up in Congress, and it would basically drop, basically will not drop, but it would create federal protections for LGBTQI individuals in the same way the Civil Rights Act of 1964 did for women, people of color, and others. But it didn't happen for LGBTQI people back then, clearly. But now this would give them that protections, that same federal protections across the board, so that they can have housing, so they can have public accommodation. So this can end a lot of the bigotry that still lingers in this country when it comes to sexuality and gender identity. If we're going to support her, we got to acknowledge that supporting her and coming back to this country means creating a better country for people like her, like myself and others. That needs to happen. That's not happening right now. And I thought that was an important thing to bring to the conversation. I hope and pray for her speedy recovery and her safety. And I just really, really, hope people get their shit together. I'm going to entertain this for 5 seconds. But this Kim Kardashian worker, get your ass and go to work thing, I think has been exhausting the conversation. There's nothing more that I could say that this is why Kim, every time. I'm not saying that the abusive things that Kanye West is doing to you is acceptable, because it absolutely is not, and I don't want to conflate the thing. But what I'm saying is that, Kim is just such a complex character, right? And I say that with the complex being with a K and the character with a K, because that's, she loves the word K. They love the K in the Kardashian family. But I think one of the things that is interesting is that there is such a cognitive dissonance that Kim has. And I think part of it is driven by the fact that so many people have questioned her work ethic, questioned her fame, and now she has gone gun-ho labor exploiter. I think about those sweatshops that might be making her products, and I'm wondering, are you acting like people don't want to work anymore? What are you talking about? In this pandemic, people have been overworked, overspent. Like, what are you saying? I just don't know. I don't know where her like she was not specific, and then she wants to give this what I call that girl boss white feminist type of ideology that really is rooted in neo liberal politics around capitalism and just really gross misinterpretations of work and ethics. But anywho, what are we doing here? What are we doing, Kim? What are we doing? Like, Kim, there's a lot going on, and this was unnecessary, and it was just so unnecessary. And it's like you're working with you got your baby law degree, or you're working towards passing the bar, the baby bar, or something like that. I think it is junior bar, whatever. And you're trying to be a lawyer, and you're trying to go about it in a way that doesn't require you to go to law school and everything. Okay. Where is the social cultural competence? Where does that come in here? I guess it doesn't. I don't know. But I just think it's easy to be born from money. It's easy to come from money. It's easy to have a cushion and support system. It's easy to be supported by family and friends and big names when you're young, building you up to encourage you to work at your best ability compared to most Americans who don't have those resources. That's all I'm going to say on that. And Travis Scott, which is in this Kardashian-Jenner family, he is releasing some type of program to address health and wellness or some crap. And like all these stunts he's been doing lately to try to downplay the situation that happened at Astroworld that led to people being injured and dying. Like, it was a tragic fucking event that was done by a lot of his mismanagement and that of Rock Nation and others involved. He's now been doing this on this, apology tour that's like really weird, where he's trying to create these various things that cover his image. And I think in some ways it's trying to tamper with the way that the jury might see him when he starts to go to trial for some of this stuff. And I just this is not cool, man. I don't know who your team is. I don't know what they're trying to do, but I don't see it. All right. Moving along. Ryan Coogler's this bank teller thing with Bank of America. Y'all, listen. I just want to say this. This is what I'm bringing to the conversation, because there's a lot been said. So for people who don't know, Ryan Coogler, famous director, he directed Creed. He's doing Black Panther. He is doing, a lot of films like Black Panther, the sequel, Wakanda Forever, he's doing the sequel right now, of course. And it's been interesting following this and seeing what happened. Long story short, he went to Bank of America, which I have a bank account with. And he went there, and he's a celebrity, and he had his mask on, and he had a beanie on, and he wrote a note, saying, look, he put his card in, because at Bank of America, before you can even ask for money to withdraw from your account, you have to swipe your card, you have to type in your PIN number, and then it asks you how much you want to take out. All that information is told to the bank teller. All that information is already shared in advance. He put a note under to tell her how much he wanted to be taken out. And actually, that's a common thing. Whenever I went to the bank teller to write notes, I would write the amount or something. Maybe I don't want to say it out loud or draw attention. There's been incidents that's happened in Atlanta and other parts across the country where people go to banks and they tell how much money they have or ask for cash or whatever, and they get robbed right outside. I mean, there's all kinds of things that happen. This is not an uncommon thing. So he wrote the note, what he wanted to get. He put it down and he slid there because he did not want to draw attention to himself. He asked for the piece of paper. Paper always gets transferred between. The bank teller was a black woman. She, rather than actually outright, sound concerned, the people there acted like everything was normal right away. And next thing you know, people come out with guns drawn. Cops come out, with guns and weapons like he's about to rob the bank. And it just causes commotion. And it's the black woman who did this. And I think the reality is the bank teller has a problem. I think this is completely inappropriate, regardless of race. I think we need to understand that racial incidents can happen even if it involves other black people, because there is internalized blackness. There is racial profiling. I mean, one would argue with another white director who would have went there and did the same thing would have had the same response. And there are people who are black within our own community that will profile. We profile each other and treat each other like suspicious. There is a lot of that happens, right? This is real. It's like the same way with misogyny noir, right? There's black women that perpetuates internalized misogyny and misogyny noir if they're black to other women based on things, say certain things, internalize that. That's culture. Like that's a thing. And that still does not refute the fact that there's racism involved, that there's prejudice involved, that there's these issues involved. And I think people are always acting like something has to be racist if it has an N-word. I'm not going to let white people continue to define what racism is. In one breath, you all say it doesn't matter, it's no big deal, it doesn't exist. And in one moment, you're like, oh, no, but this is how it should be and this is what it is. Which one is it? No, you cannot control and dictate what it is. But what happened to Ryan Coogler was a byproduct of racial profiling. And just because it involved another black person doesn't mean it wasn't as disgusting and despicable. It actually is. Because sometimes it's young people. So yeah, I just cannot. Now, moving along, this Chris Brown situation. Okay? This Chris Brown situation, I don't know if y'all been following, but he was accused of rape. And, you know, Chris Brown's been accused of a lot of things over time. And as somebody who's not the biggest Chris Brown fan, you know, because of the situation with Rihanna, just in general, some of his comments on social media, just a lot of things. The Frank Ocean fighting and drama between them. There's a lot of issues with Chris Brown. And his music is just not good anymore. It hasn't been good for a while. And this is nothing like redeeming about him. But in this situation, Chris Brown was right? And proved it. And he was accused of rape recently by a woman who, was trying to sue him for $20 million. Claimed that, she was drugged at a Diddy party and that she had messages to prove it. And then he came out and pulled out receipts, text messages that she sent him saying he was the best ever, saying all these different things. And he shared on his social media. And as a result, the lawyers representing her has now left defending her, as they should. And he basically proved his case that, pretty much that the way that this narrative was spun, she spun the narrative, she lied. And he had the receipts to prove it. This happens. There are situations where there are people that in rare, very, really, really rare circumstances will lie about someone. And it's sad because then situations like this gets weaponized against actual victims and people who do actually have situations where they are victims and they've been raped and things. And that's the frustrating part, right? But what I will say is that, in addition to this, people say, well, why do people just be quick to believe the victim? Because I think the statistical probability of Chris Brown being wrong oftentimes is higher than the statistical it's oftentimes higher than the statistical non-believing of victims, right? So people are more inclined to believe because of Chris Brown's track record for drama and mess. They're more likely to believe he do something wrong because of his track record of being wrong often compared to believing victims overall. Because it's like to say and suggest that someone's lying automatically without the proof being there, without the conversation. The burden often do go to victims of those experiences because sometimes it's really hard to believe someone would lie about something traumatic like that. But there are people who do in rare occasions. And this was one of them, it appears. And so I think the real thing here is outside of this, right? Because this is clear and this is fucked up and it's disgusting. And I don't have any, this is ridiculous. And there are people who are doing that. And there's people who lie about race and lynchings and things. It happens. My thing though to Chris Brown is, dude, you gotta, for what it's worth, you gotta get a better team. You gotta be around, you gotta change it up for your health, for your safety, for yourself. You gotta be, because there are gonna be people out here for various reasons that are going to put you in shit and mess, but he's prone to the bullshit because there's a lot of times when he doesn't have to choose violence when he chooses violence, but he's just got to shift up his environment. He's a father, he has children. He's got to change up his environment because it's just, he has some extreme fans, but like, I wonder what it's like to be a Chris Brown fan. I'm not a Chris Brown fan, but to be a Chris Brown fan and you see your fave always in some shit and you're like, bro, go home. Go home. Like, stop this. Leave her alone. Like, how does it feel to always have to just go to bat and deal with that? It's just, that's why I can't withstand culture, because these people are so fucking problematic. I just think if I was in Chris Brown's camp, you have to. Like, for me, let me tell you something. I don't go anywhere alone. I don't go anywhere alone. Like, I don't. I'm not super famous, but people be lying out here. People really be lying out here, right? And no, not in a sense of accusing them of rape, but folks be out here lying, like just straight lying and being fake. And it just always has been good for me, because I know people just like to lie or just misinterpret things, even on social media. I want to be with people that bear witness. I want to be around, I want to have a crew. I don't go anywhere without my friends or, an accomplice or my husband or family. Like, I don't really go out by myself anywhere, because I remember many years ago, I went to an event and I had an interaction with someone, and they just misinterpreted. It was a confrontation. Well, they confronted me. Let me be clear. I didn't roll up on anybody. Not that I won't roll up on somebody if they're wrong, but like I was ran up on. Someone came up to me, and like we had this exchange back and forth, and they walked out that conversation and completely mischaracterized the conversation. Lied, said, "Oh, this person called me this and said this and this," and it wasn't even that kind of energy. And it's multiple times where people will do that when you're in a space. Sometimes by yourself, minding your own fucking business. I don't know y'all remember that story about that guy from Philadelphia who, like, I talked about this a couple of episodes ago, a while back. But like, this guy literally saw me at a restaurant and was just like Facebooking like me, like a stalker almost, like literally talking about seeing me. Now, mind you, this person at this place, I never knew who they were. I saw them, they smiled, they waved, they said hello. But they went on social media and people intercepted this, right? And was describing me and talking about me the whole entire time and just mischaracterizing the fame of me. And I was like, but bro, you had none of this energy, you said none of this stuff when I was in your space. Like, I literally had a friend had to call me and say, Ernest, go to the bathroom. I was like, why are you telling me to go back there? Go to the bathroom, don't say anything. They called me and said, yo, there's somebody in that restaurant or whatever that's like saying a lot of crazy shit. And I'm like, who? They screenshot, show me the person. I'm like, wow. I was shocked. It was the weirdest shit ever. And I was by myself. Like, I just went out to this tasting. And that's when I said, you know what? I'm always going to have a plus one. I'm always going to bring somebody with me, because I don't have time for the bullshit. And you know what I've realized in those experiences? Motherfuckers ain't lying about me that much. They can lie about me in personal opinions, but they don't be out here just, I saw Ernest, my friend was there. What happened? What happened, best friend? What happened, homegirl? What happened, agent? What happened, publicist? I'm always with somebody, because this is how shit go left. This is what it is. And this is why I keep my circle very tight. I keep my circle very close. I'm not afraid to go out in places. Like, I go out to stuff all the time, but I don't go anywhere by myself, because people will literally like infatuate their own stories or make up believe about it. And if you don't have a secondary source or witness, it can create problems. So I just love always having people around me when I go out publicly, because folks out here will literally just make shit up for their own benefit. And so I just want to add that, just put that in the space, because that happens to people. Even people I know, I'm like, wow, that's wild. So in closing, there's been a lot of shows that's been out. Bel Air, that's all I'm going to say. I don't want to tell anything. Bel Air. I really went from being reserved on this show to liking the show. But I'm liking the show recognizing that, okay, Fresh Prince did happen, but let me not be up in the Fresh Prince conversation, because if I get caught up in a Fresh Prince conversation, I'm going to then do too many comparisons. I'm really watching Bel Air as its own show, and I'm infatuated with how it's evolving and the characters are developing. I really like that. So that's really what I'm going to say on Bel Air. Bel Air is really good. And I really think more people should just watch it, and get into it. It's really I'm really enjoying it. I'm enjoying it. The Dropout. I'm following the series. I'm following episodes. Please watch it. It's fascinating. It's on Hulu. Just watch it. That's all I'm going to say. Amanda Seyfried, you're trying to get an Emmy. I see you trying to get your Emmy nomination. I see you, girl. You want that Emmy nomination, and you're crushing it. Inventing Anna, boring. I wasn't crazy about Inventing Anna. I do like Shonda Rhimes. I do appreciate her. But Inventing Anna, we didn't need this. I don't like the backstory. I like the fact this woman scammed people and then got paid by Netflix. Nothing about this entire show feels good or makes me feel vindicated or anything. I don't like it. And it's just, did not like it. Boring. And boring in the sense that it's just like, what are we trying to achieve here? Like, what are we trying to get from this person? Like, I just felt like it was just so much messiness. And too many people getting checks for bullshit. So, not crazy about the show. Yeah, I would say that those were the things. And also, there has been a death in the Braxton family, which is very sad. I was surprised when I saw some of the things that were said in the news. And it was like right before I was starting this podcast and I got this information. And I was like, what's going on? And Tracy Braxton, Toni Braxton's sister, Tamar, I followed her through the Braxton family values. I watched the show a couple episodes, and Tracy died at 50 years old from cancer. And that's sad. My mother's 51, and 50 is very, very young. And I remember on social media, she was losing a lot of weight, and people were speculating how she was losing her weight. She didn't tell her story. But, it's just another reminder of that life is precious. Things happen. And so really just, I don't know. There's a really good tweet that a good friend of mine, somebody I follow along social media, they're a huge fan, but I retweeted them, and I thought this was a really, it just hit me. They said, what if you read a tweet, didn't understand it, then didn't comment? And that hit. That hit. That hit for me when I heard that. And that felt good. And so I always tell people, you should, I evolve as a person too. And I think about, how I choose violence, right? But I think what's important is that, it's important to just recognize that there's multitudes to a person, that a person can have a bunch of different things going on in their life, and it's never centered around one issue or one cause. And I wrestle with that with elected officials or candidates, but regular people, and I mean regular people that do not hold immense power. But I do recognize the multitudes of people. And I think sometimes social media, the internet, and folks in general, oftentimes, just think of one person in one state. Now, if we're talking about criminal behavior, that's another conversation. But just in general, I just think moments like this tells people, like, hey, take a step back. See a person's humanity. Because, the same thing was with Chadwick Boseman. Like, he did not tell anyone about his cancer diagnosis publicly. Not to say that you just treat people nice because you don't know what's going on with them. It's just that you just have to I just think beyond nice, right? Is just recognizing the humanity of people. And recognizing how to exert critique or energy or whatever, with that in mind. Food for thought. So, until then, be well and be best. Earnestly Speaking is recorded in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and can be found on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. To stay up to date with the latest on the show, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Mr. Ernest Owens. Use the hashtag Earnestly Speaking to tell me what you thought about this episode, and check out my website at ernestowens.com.